Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 208, Blaydes versus Aspinall, also known as UFC London, or really more correctly, we should probably call it UFC London 2, since the UFC had a London card just back in March. In any event, I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, back together, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. We certainly missed you on the UFC Long
No, you
Island
didn't.
recap.
It's all right. No, you didn't.
Anybody who's watching this probably watched the recap, and they know that you were obviously very missed because we talked about you plenty. Talked about all the picks you made right and none of the ones you made wrong.
Okay,
I mean,
cool,
what could be
cool.
better than that?
All right.
But something came up in the conversation during that recap that I wanted to bring up off the top before we talk about this card, because someone on Twitter, and I'm pretty sure it was Luke Thomas, pointed out that since the UFC has gone back to doing regular fight night cards away from the Apex, they have all been bangers. The first London card was kind of the first non-pay-per-view they did away from Vegas since COVID. Then UFC Columbus, UFC Austin, UFC Long Island, they've all been wild cards.
Okay.
And not just because they had, a bunch of great fights, but also so many new fighters who were signed during the COVID era and have never fought in front of crowds before.
That's a good point.
Like fighting. So many winners, like just crying or just saying ridiculous stuff because they're just losing their minds. It's been a fun ride. UFC London 2, which takes place at O2 Arena on the 23rd, the card we're about to talk about, has its work cut out for it if it's going to keep up that trend. But certainly the UFC has done their best to stack this card with stuff that is going to delight the London crowd. It is a 14-fight card. Between us, you and I, as pros that watch all the fights, no matter what, we have our feelings about 14-fight cards, but every single one of these fights has at least one European in it. 4 of them are European versus European. So there's no chance that they're just going to be sitting there drumming their fingers watching a Chinese and a Brazilian fighter fight each other. It's got a couple of the UK's super, super favorites. I mean, it's got Molly McCann. Yeah. It's got Paddy Pimblett. Yeah. It has Mason Jones. Speaking of people like Nathaniel Wood, now that Jack Shore has finally taken his first L, Wood is one of the guys that we're going to start hearing about him being, I think, the destiny of British MMA, probably, okay. The next guy. More importantly, there are some low-level fighters on this card, especially first couple fights, but there's not a single fight on this card that I go, oh man, I can tell this fight's going to suck.
Okay.
I'm
excited. I'm always excited to go to England because the Europeans always have, especially certain places, Ireland, England, they have the best crowds. I mean, even think about like when Bellator, not even that big cards, the pump you can feel coming through the telly, as we go over across the pond. I'm excited, man. Listen, I'm so pumped for England. I got my tea ready. Let me see if I do it right. I'm not really drinking. That's water, but I try to put it in a teacup. I got my football. What's the local London team?
Well,
obviously, I mean, I know there's like a million leagues, but what's the big?
Yeah,
team? What's like the?
If I mention one, I'll leave one.
Well, I know
out.
Manchester's a big one, but that's obviously in Manchester.
I mean, Manchester has Manchester City and Manchester United, which are 2 of the best and most popular teams in the UK.
I didn't know those 2. It shows you how American I am. I didn't know those 2.
I'm so American. I'm drinking a Diet Coke. I'm not even trying to pretend to like fit in with this stuff.
I would have tried to do a British accent, but that would have really embarrassed myself. Better than if I try to disguise my New England accent. I can't do a real England accent.
Man, like I said, 14 fights. Shall we just dig straight into these?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First fight up at UFC London is a welterweight matchup between Claudio Silva and Nicolas Dalby. Silva, the 39-year-old Brazilian, is 14-3 overall. He is 5-2 in the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news is that the 2 are his last 2 fights. After winning his first 5 fights in the UFC across a long period of time. He's had a couple of long injury layoffs that I'll talk about in a minute. He came back in October of 2020, lost a unanimous decision to James Krause at one of the UFC fight nights out on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Came back last May at UFC Fight Night, Font versus Garbrandt, and dropped a unanimous decision to Court McGee. So he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He is pushing 40. He's going to try to get this turned around against Dalby. The 37-year-old Danish fighter is 19-4-1 with 2 no contests overall. He's 3-3-1 with 1 no contest across 2 different stints with the UFC. Since coming back to the UFC this most recent time, he's 2-1 with 1 no contest. He did lose his last time out. That was a unanimous decision loss to Tim Means last June, so a little over a year ago at UFC Fight Night Gone versus Volkov. Before that, he had a surprising and frankly impressive win over Daniel Rodriguez back at UFC 255. Odds on this one do favor Dalby pretty heavily, minus 275. Silva plus 225 on the comeback. That's going to be part of the story of tonight in the efforts to serve the local crowd a little bit. There are some pretty lopsided matchups in this card, and they pretty much all favor the local fighter. So prepare for a bunch of that. I'll say this. I understand why the line is what it is here. Speaking of things that are what they are, Nicolas Dalby is what he is. He is basically, he's a European action fighter. He's a real fun fighter to watch. Aggressive, good striker, tons of guts. Obviously, his fights are often blood and guts. He has kind of a bit of a gutsy story to himself. If you have heard him talk about his time between his 2 stints in the UFC, it's heartwarming to see him back in the UFC and winning some fights. Honestly, he kind of reminds me of the first Danish fighter I can think of in the UFC, Martin Kampmann, where he came to the UFC with the reputation of this is a high-level European kickboxer, and he turned out, he's a pretty good striker, but never among the best strikers in the division, but ended up being surprisingly well-rounded, pretty good ground game, and always in exciting fights. That's Nicolas Dalby. Claudio Silva, if you'd asked me, 6-7 years ago, I'd say, this guy has top 10 upside in the welterweight division. His win over Leon Edwards has aged incredibly well. Nordine Taleb was a good win at the time. Nordine Taleb was his first fight back from like 3 or 4 years off with a variety of injuries. And for him to come back and choke out Taleb in a round, then, get 2 more quick stoppage wins, I thought, wow, even in his late 30s, this guy maybe has something left in the tank. That has not been the case in his last 2 fights. It's not a good look that James Krause literally got off a bar stool in Abu Dhabi, stepped up on 24 hours notice, and handled Silva in Silva's wheelhouse, because Silva's whole thing on the come up was that he was just this brutally strong grappler who had good offensive wrestling for a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy and just steamrolled people on the ground, and Krause handled him. It was even worse when he came back last year and took on Court McGee, a guy that you and I both agree is held together with chewing gum and duct tape and baling wire at this point. And Court McGee also whooped Silva in Silva's own wheelhouse. He took him down with ease. He just crushed him from top position, as his nickname would imply. He's the one that was threatening Silva with submissions. Like, it was an ugly look. Claudio Silva is about as shot a fighter as I can think of in the UFC, who isn't like a legacy fighter, not like a Donald Cerrone or a Joe Lozon type, but for a fighter who's just kind of another guy, he's about as shot a guy as I can think of that's still on roster. Because of that, I understand why this is the line is what it is. And give me Dalby all day. I think Dalby's he's a little bigger and rangier. If he wants to keep it a striking battle, I think we'll have a fun, just kind of, again, blood and guts, Nicolas Dalby fight. Dalby will be bleeding 90 seconds into the fight, but I think he's faster and longer than Silva on the feet, even if he doesn't have the same sheer power. And if Claudio Silva wants to get to the ground, I don't think he's going to be able to get Dalby down. Like, Dalby's turned out to be a pretty sturdy defensive wrestler, surprisingly good offensive wrestler. This is a UFC level welterweight against a non-UFC level welterweight to me. Give me Nicolas Dalby, and I'm going to say decision, but a pretty dominant one. Like, I could see like a 10-8 third round, as Silva's just tired and frustrated and Dalby's teeing off on him.
Yeah, I like a lot of things you were saying. One question you said that James Krause came literally off of the bar stool. I kind of wonder what James Krause was drinking at that moment. Like,
tequila. We know exactly what he was drinking. He was
Oh,
like,
did he
I
say
had a
that?
shot of tequila. Yeah, he said I had a shot of
Okay.
tequila in my hand, you know, with some guys from
Why
my
did James
team.
Krause do it to tequila?
Yeah, he's like, the text message came up on my phone, and I put the shot down and said, okay, I got to go start cutting weight.
Oh, at least do the shot. Like, what's that one shot going to do? At least do the shot. Do the shot and then say, okay. Yeah, that's a great story. The other thing I disagree with, you said that Claudio Silva, you said that Dalby it will be bigger than Claudio Silva. Not in the midsection, though. Like Claudio Silva, like if Roy Nelson was Brazilian and could make 170 and cut his hair, like Claudio Silva was looking pretty chunky in his last fight. He was
Dalby will be taller and have longer reach. There, let me just leave it at that. Because you're totally right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Dalby's a nice story. He really is. He's one of the guys. You're right. He's fun to cheer for. He's a fun action fighter. More like output than like athlete. He's going to beat you with high output, high pressure. He's one of these guys. He's willing to eat a punch to land one of his own. Some of that might be due to a lack of head movement, but he does make the mistake of overthrowing. Like, he's not very technically sound, but he's got plus power. He throws a lot of hard kicks. He likes tip kicks. He loves that like Holly Holm push you back side kick. He's a very underrated offensive wrestler. He has 4 submission wins, and he has the cardio to go hard all 15 minutes. Claudio Silva, a lot of the opposite I just said about Nicolas Dalby. He's a southpaw. He's a minus athlete. He's pretty flat-footed. He does hit hard, and that's because he loads up on everything, and I feel like he just throws. Like, there's no game plan behind what he's trying to do. Like, he's not saying like, all right, I'm going to throw a jab. I'm going to sidestep and try to wrap around left hook. Something like there's no game plan. It's just, yeah, I'm just going to throw this punch. A lot of his punches are looping. He overthrows also, leaving him out of position. He throws the best thing he does on his feet. He has like hard leg kicks. And that's just because he's a big dude. He will shoot for takedowns. A lot of like single legs, but he'll shoot without any setup. We saw that against Court McGee in his last fight. He'll just reach for takedowns. His takedown defense is just non-existing. Court McGee was taking him down at will. And then he was struggling on the bottom. Now, in the first round, he was kind of tossing up submissions. Obviously, he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. He has 9 subs in his record. That's his go-to. But as the fight went on, the attacks from the bottom became less and less. He has a really bad gas tank. And what I love is between the first and second round, or maybe it was the second, third. I think it was the first second. It might have been the second, third. Between rounds, Paul Felder threw him underneath the bus and said that he was doing some of those stalling things where he suddenly doesn't speak English at all, doesn't know it's time to get off the stool, playing a little bit of that game. Which, listen, you know me, I love that. You know, Tim Elliott loves that. So like, I'm not going to hold that against him. But I'm with you, man. I'm pretty confident in Dalby. I really only see Silva either landing a huge shot and getting an early KO or catching a quick sub, maybe catching a guillotine or something. But every minute this goes on, the more it favors Dalby. Being that he's 39, you can't have confidence in Silva. I mean, he got 30-26 on 2 judges' scorecard in his last fight against freaking Court McGee.
Yeah.
I can't see him getting better at this point. Give me Dalby. I'm actually going to say Dalby stops him because of his output. I'm going to say he gets a 3rd round TKO. I'm going to say he's on top. He lands some ground and pound.
Next up at UFC Fight Night 208 is a women's flyweight matchup between Mandy Bohm and Victoria Leonardo. 2 women still looking for their first win in the UFC. Barring something strange, one of them is going to get it on Saturday. So let's meet these 2. Bohm, the 32-year-old German, is 7-1 with 1 no contest overall. She's 0-1 in the UFC. Her debut was last September at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann, where she dropped a lopsided unanimous decision to Ariane Lipski. She'll be meeting Leonardo. The 32-year-old Louisianan is 8-4 overall. She is 0-2 since joining the UFC out of the 4th season of Dana White's Contender Series. She debuted against Manon Fior at UFC Fight Night Chiesa versus Magny last January, got TKO'd in the 2nd round, then came back last August at UFC 265, was not doing well against Melissa Gatto when she had to be relieved by the doctor after the 2nd round with an arm injury. It looked like her elbow was dislocated or something. At any rate, she also is looking for her first UFC win. She is not favored to do so. As of right now, Bohm is about -160 as the favorite, Leonardo +130 as the underdog. Keith, I don't say this easily, but these probably are the worst 2 women in the UFC women's flyweight division. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'd have to look at
I'm not sure what either of them really does at a UFC level. Like, not even one single skill or physical attribute. Like, neither of them is especially big. Neither is especially athletic. The things that they're quote unquote good at, they're not good at on a UFC level. We talked off camera a minute ago about Herbert Burns over Bill Algeo being one of your worst picks ever. That is nothing. I picked Victoria Leonardo to beat Manon Fior.
Okay, you gotta be tough.
That's the worst pick in history. Like 2 years from now, when Manon Fior is the UFC flyweight champ because Valentina Shevchenko like moved up to 135 or retired, and that's going to be the worst pick in the history of Sherdog previews. I swear. And the thing is, yeah, Leonardo got stopped by an arm injury against Melissa Gatto, but she's getting whooped. I mean, she was losing that fight badly anyway. Mandy Bohm. The jury is still out over whether Ariane Lipski is going to fulfill. Well, what's that?
Sorry, let me ask you this. So she got her arm broken, so they had to stop the fight. You know, she'd be one arm. What if we did the opposite? What if we gave her a 3rd arm? Like, would that have mattered against Gatto if she had 3 arms fighting Gatto?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
And I think if you taken one arm away from Gatto, she still might have pulled it out.
Like she's too unathletic to get all 3 going. She's hitting herself with the extra arm.
Oh man, we're terrible. This is definitely staying in.
This, it's because we're not taping at a normal time, so we're off the rails already.
That's exactly it. Bohm, like as I was saying, the jury is still out over whether Ariane Lipski is going to fulfill any of the promise she had as a frankly hyped and prized free agent coming to the UFC a couple years ago.
Yeah, hold on a second. Is the jury really out? Is it still out?
The only reason the jury is still out is because of Mandy Bohm.
Oh,
because
okay,
for one shining night,
fair
shining moment, she made Ariane Lipski look like the KSW Ariane Lipski.
That's true.
Lipski beat the crap out of Bohm. 10-8 3rd round easily. 2nd round probably could have been 10-8. Everything Lipski threw at her landed. She busted her up. She did the kind of takedowns where she just kind of grabbed a kick and just flung her to the canvas. It was the whole violence queen thing that she had in KSW. And when this ends up being Ariane Lipski's last UFC win and she goes on to like lose, 4 more in a row before they cut her, we'll have Mandy Bohm to thank for that. All this long way around to saying, I don't know how they came up with odds for this. This is a rough matchup, but to me, it is someone in Leonardo that is going to want to grapple and going to try to grapple versus somebody in Bohm that is probably going to try to stay away and pot shot. And in that, between 2, frankly, marginal talents, I am going to lean with the one who wants to get it to the ground. So give me Leonardo by decision in a mild upset, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny when I think of Leonardo, she's only 0-2 in the UFC, and I'm shocked by that probably because you've seen her on, Invicta and seen her in, the Contender Series, and I feel like she's a veteran of the UFC, like she's been around for a long time. The one thing I'll say about Leonardo is, and I agree with everything you said, like about this being lower level fighters. The one thing, when I was looking at her record, she has 4 losses. Her 4 losses are to Miranda Maverick, Erin Blanchfield, Manon Fiorot, and Melissa Gatto. Like, she's lost to really good people. Like, she hasn't lost to a Mandy Bohm level fighter. So that's like the one thing she has going for her. Now, she definitely is a minus athlete, but the one thing you said, she's not big. I disagree with that. Like, she's a brute. Like, she's a physically strong. Like, she's ripped up. Like, she's got like, I'm surprised you're not really into it, because she's got some good arms. Like, she's got some ripped up arms. She's flat footed. I described when I did my Contender Series preview on her is that she's a boxer that throws kicks. She's not a flowing kickboxer. No. She wants to box in the pocket. She kind of chases the KO instead of just letting it happen. She has a lot of defensive holes. She keeps her chin high in the air. She keeps her head on the center line. She doesn't check kicks. From the outside, because she's a bigger one, she does have a large arsenal of kicks, but they're more, and I said this on a preview, they're more like round winners than they are damaging. They're just kind of like when the Courtney Casey throws kicks. Like, she's not going to hurt you. She's just going to kind of score points with it. She does, the one thing she does do good is she fights with a lot of pressure. She knows her best avenue of victory is to march forward. If she's struggled, if she's kind of bullied back on her back foot, that's where she kind of struggles. If she gets in the clinch, she's strong in the clinch, kind of can grind on her opponent, use her size, land some short inside elbows. She'll drop down to a takedown. She can also shoot from the outside, though I don't think she's not strong, but she's physically strong. So she's pretty good defensive wrestler. Similar to like what we just saw in Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy just like out-muscled takedowns from Miesha Tate. That's kind of what she can do. And if you take it on, she's hard to hold down from the top. Looks more to do damage than to look for subs. And I actually think her card is weapon. So I actually think I just talked myself into liking Victoria Leonardo. I actually had a lot more positive to say about her than I thought it was. Bohm, it's surprising how old she is. Is it true that she's 32? Because when you look at pictures of her, she looks like she's 16. Like,
and I remember seeing her in her debut, and she looked young.
Is it like Mandy Bohm? Is she like that girl who's on like Facebook or Instagram and all her pictures are from like 12, 13 years ago? Because that's like when they look the best, so they don't update it at all.
You would think that might be it, but no, I remember seeing her actually fight. No, she looks young.
She looks so baby faced. But for someone who's supposed to be a prospect, being 32 is a little troublesome. What she does good, she's a boxer. She has good output. I'd say she's pretty accurate, fairly fast, but I think she lacks power. She likes to kind of beat her opponent to the point of the attack, and that's mostly with the jab. But she's got a lot of defense holes. You mentioned she drops her hands, lacks head movement. Ariana Lipsky was beating her up. She besides throwing her to the ground twice, she rocked her on the feet a couple times. Bohm is also ripped up a little bit. Like, she looks like she's physically strong, and when she's gotten to the plum clinch, she does have like a little bit of mean streak in there, but she's a weak defensive wrestler, and she's not much of a submission threat if it goes to the ground. She has 2 submissions. She has 2 submissions on her. I mean, she's got a little younger fighter, so maybe that'll improve. But this is a tough pick because they're both low-level fighters, but we're both on the same upset pick. I'm going Leonardo too. I think Bohm might be the better boxer, but Leonardo, I think, has the pressure and the output to beat her in the stand-up. Plus, I think Bohm will finally face someone who's just so much physically stronger than her. I see the output and the mixture of takedowns from Leonardo leading to, I guess, also a slight upset decision win.
Next up at UFC London is a lightweight matchup between 2 gentlemen who are both 1-3 in the UFC, but the similarities kind of end there. It is Jai Herbert versus Kyle Nelson. Herbert, the 34-year-old from England, is 11-4 overall. As I said, he's 1-3 since joining the UFC as the former Cage Warriors lightweight champ. He has lost to Francisco Trinaldo, Renato Moicano, and Ilia Topuria, those sandwiched around a knockout win over Kama Worthy. His most recent outing, the loss to Topuria, was at UFC Fight Night, Volkan versus Aspinall, which was just the last UFC London back in March. He'll try to get back to his winning ways against Nelson. The 31-year-old Canadian is 13-4 overall. He also 1-3 in the UFC. He also lost his first 2, those against Diego Ferreira and Matt Sales. Came back with a win over Marco Polo Reyes, and then lost his most recent outing. It was a third round knockout at the hands of Billy Quarantillo. That was all the way back in September of 2020. So going on 2 years since we've seen Kyle Nelson in the cage, but here he is. He'll be there in London. Herbert, a pretty sizable favorite here. He's minus 275. Nelson plus 225. Keith, Jai Herbert is, I think, a better fighter than his record in the UFC indicates. And it is just that he has faced an absolutely brutal slate of competition since he's been here. He has gotten no breaks.
What do you do to the UFC brass? Like, geez.
Okay. Yeah. What did this man do? Man. He seems like a perfectly genial fellow. They give him Francisco Trinaldo. He loses that one. Well, how about Renato Moicano? Loses that one. His super bounce back fight is Kama Worthy, who came into the UFC and was just knocking people out left and right. He wins that one, and they give him straight to Ilia Topuria, one of the hottest prospects in the division.
It's like, how dare you win? Let's give him Topuria. He wins this fight. Next, they're gonna give him friggin' Francis Ngannou. Man, they hate Herbert.
They do not like him. Nonetheless, he's the favorite here, substantial favorite for the first time in his UFC run, as he's finally taking on someone who's less proven than himself and has been away for a long time on top of that. How do you see this fight going, and who do you think gets it done?
Yeah, it's actually a really fun matchup. I think it's both guys are action guys. Both guys are powerful strikers. Herbert, he is a plus athlete, light on his feet. He's an outside fighter who works behind a really good jab. His straight shots on the pipe are really good. I like when he follows up and gets in the pocket, he starts looking for like slicing elbows. He showed that he has power in both of his hands. He dropped Trinaldo in his UFC debut, which is like to jump on it again, like Francisco Trinaldo in your UFC debut. He knocked out Kama Worthy. He's a very underrated, solid offensive wrestler. He has some slick back takes. He likes to go to the body triangle because of these long legs. He's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, we saw that against Renato Moicano. Like, Moicano was taken down easily. And then the other negative you really have to worry about is now you have to worry about his chin, because, I mean, Topuria knocked him into next week with the shot, which is concerning, your return fight. Now, Nelson, he's an aggressive boxer. Like, he's going to stay in your face. He throws a lot of power shots. His straight right kind of being his go-to. He throws it a lot, like very Dan Henderson, Josh Koscheck, trying to land that one big shot. He can throw a lot of winging power shots. I like that he goes down to the body. I like that he has a lot of kicks, calf kicks, though he does throw them oftentimes naked leg kicks. And he's also someone you have to be worried about his chin. Now, he took a long layoff, but his last fight, he got one punch walk-off by Billy Quarantillo. Now, it was the third round. It was a little deeper in the fight, but still. Gets in the clinch, strong, dirty boxing. He will wrestle a little bit. He has 4 submission wins, but the one thing I don't like for a guy who's high output, he wasn't able to sustain it against Billy Quarantillo. Like, halfway through that fight, he was really starting to gas out, and that probably led to the knockout.
And if you'll let me interject here, worth noting that fight was at featherweight, and that might have contributed to those problems. This one, of course, is at lightweight, so maybe
that's fair enough.
Maybe that sent him back to the drawing board.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's one thing you focus on a lot. I don't focus on weight classes much. That's a really, really good point. Man, we joke about the murderer's row that Jai Herbert has had to go through. This is a step down, but I like Nelson. Like, the dude is a dog for sure. Like, I think we're gonna have a striking war on our hands. I think they're both going to go back and forth, but I think I'm going to lean with Herbert. I think he eventually is going to crumble. I think he's going to crumble on Nelson. I think he's going to find a big shot. I'm going to say he does in the second round. So hold on. So let's go 1-0 for England on the night.
Keith takes his first slug of tea, on the UFC London preview. Yeah, I'm with you in that this should be a really fun fight for as long as it lasts. Nelson is going to come forward and he's going to bring a fight out of Herbert, because Herbert has been at times willing to let the fight come to him, both in Cage Warriors and in the UFC. That won't be a problem against Nelson. He's definitely going to force the issue. I'll be interested to see if Herbert decides to use some of his underrated offensive wrestling against the guy who comes forward as aggressively as Nelson. Reactive level changes should be there for him if he wants. Just, just changing level and just snatching a single, which he's capable of doing with his long arms. But I think this kind of favors Herbert everywhere. I think he's a little better at just about everything than Nelson is. My concern with the Quarantillo fight for Nelson, which again, that's the last time we saw him, and it was almost 2 years ago. That in and of itself doesn't make me feel great. But the other thing that bothers me is that even before he gassed out and even before he got knocked out just seconds into the third round, he was kind of losing that fight anyway against a decent featherweight in Quarantillo. And I feel as though Herbert is both bigger and has the potential to be better in his division. He's just been dealt a really rough hand so far. I see this as maybe an evening where Jai Herbert reminds us how electrifying he was in Cage Warriors, how exciting he has been at moments in the UFC, and gets things back on track in a big way. Give me Jai Herbert by second round TKO. Next up at UFC Fight Night 208 is a flyweight matchup between, one of the UFC's shiniest young things, certainly one of its youngest things, and a debuting prospect who's pretty promising in his own right. It is Muhammad Mokaev versus Charles Johnson. Mokaev, the 21-year-old Dagestani by way of Manchester, is 7-0 with 1 no contest overall. He's 1-0 in the UFC, made his debut at the last UFC London in March, took all of 58 seconds to throttle Cody Durden in front of an ecstatic hometown crowd. He comes back here 3 months later and tries to make it 2-0 to start his UFC run. And facing him will be Charles Johnson. The 31-year-old Missouri native is 11-2 overall. He is making his debut in the UFC, but he is the reigning or departing LFA flyweight champ. He is also one of the biggest underdogs on the card. He is out there around plus 370 right now. Mokaev minus 460 to minus 475 as the prohibitive favorite.
Wow.
Keith, I understand why Mokaev is such a huge favorite. He is, he's a shiny new thing. He's 21 years old. His athleticism is off the charts. He's his good skill sets, his strengths, like his grappling and wrestling are both outstanding. He's a very good striker with blinding speed, good power. I understand why he's such a huge favorite.
He's originally from Dagestan, which always
helps. He's originally from Dagestan, but he's not like, for those thinking, Dagestani by way of Manchester. No, he relocated to England in his teens. He's lived and trained out of the UK for, good 5 or 6 years now. But Charles Johnson is a guy that I figured.
How old was he when he went to England?
He was like 15 or 16 when he started training.
Yeah, but at that point, he's already been wrestling bears for like 9 years.
Yeah, had a full beard at that point. Charles Johnson. I don't see him as like a future champ or even a future top 10 guy, but he's a guy that I kind of expected to see on the Contender Series or in the UFC within the next year or so. The first I remember seeing him was actually in a loss, but it was to Brandon Royval a couple of years ago in LFA. He gave Royval a hell of a fight. I thought he took a round off him. He's given Royval a better fight than some highly regarded guys in the UFC have since. But that fight also kind of laid bare his problems. He's pretty big for a flyweight. Like, he's a tall guy. He's got muscle in his frame. He's a big looking flyweight, but he's slow for a flyweight. Like, his feet are fairly slow. I don't think his hands are very fast. The main problem he had with Royval is that Royval was just throwing 3 times his volume, and it just looked like he was running circles around him like something from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. That's gonna run him into problems in the speed kills UFC flyweight division, and it would be hard to think of a rougher guy to learn that lesson against than Muhammad Mokaev, who is, again, blisteringly fast. My thought is, this is a good prospect against an elite prospect, maybe a super elite prospect. Mokaev is probably going to show us why he's almost a 5-1 favorite here. But my guess is that this win for Mokaev ages well, because Johnson sticks around and beats some pretty decent people in the UFC flyweight division, even if his ceiling is nowhere near Mokaev's. Give me Muhammad Mokaev in this one. And you know what? Johnson's never been finished, and he's been in there with some guys who are not only very good flyweights, but are finishers. So I'm going to say Mokaev actually has to work for his supper this time. Give me a 3-round, pretty one-sided decision, but Charles Johnson is still standing there proud at the end. Mokaev by decision.
Yeah. Mokaev is, I mean, this kid is really good. I mean, he's a good blend. He has the talent, but he also has the personality in a division that's like dying for personality, in a region that we've never had a flyweight from England that were really, really, exciting future star kind of thing. As you mentioned, his athleticism jumps off the page. Look at the flying knee that did Cody Durden. He's a guy that he fights with a lot of output, but he's very technically sound boxer. He uses feints really well to draw out attacks where he can counter, slip and rip style. He's got very fast hands. I love that he targets the body. He can get inside. He can get inside and throw down and brawl and land some big shots. You mentioned he's from Dagestan, so he knows how to wrestle. Very good wrestler, fast entries, smothering top control. He has 3 submission wins out of 6 fights, which is a really good percentage. Johnson, he has a good addition to the UFC. Like I agree with what you're saying. I mean, he's an LFA champion. Like pretty much LFA champions is as good as a pedigree you have coming into the UFC, and it's not often a guy making his debut as an LFA champion is like a 5-1 underdog. He's a good kickboxer that he can fight at both stances. He uses a lot of movement. He's pretty light on his feet. Good head movement, good output. He kind of just touches. He slips well. He's more of like he slips. But he also like rolls with punches a lot. Tons of kicks. A lot of teep kicks. He likes these like long rangey teep kicks. He throws a lot of naked leg kicks though, and he's gonna have to change that. I do like that he throws a lot of step in knees. He's not a wrestler, but he'll look to like catch a kick or something to get the fight to the canvas. He's got good ground and pound. He has 3 submission wins, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. He has a pretty good get up game, and I think it's just his overall output. He's always moving, working, always doing things. He has the cardio to go 5 rounds. We've seen that. He's gone 5 rounds. I mean, his last fight was a 5th round stoppage, so cardio won't be an issue. But as far as the prediction goes, like I said, Johnson isn't a good addition to the UFC. I mean, he could be a top 15 level talent if he continues to improve. However, Mokaev could be the champion. Like, that's how good his upside is. You sold me a little bit about it being that Johnson has never been stopped and he's faced some really good talent. But you're going into think about this. You're in your UFC debut. You're flying to the other side of the world in this guy's hometown. Listen, you're not going to Biloxi. You're going to England where the crowd is rocking from the very first. No, nothing against Biloxi, but the crowd's rocking from the second you walk in there. They love their stars. They love their people. Every punch, every kick this guy lands, the crowd's gonna be going crazy. I say the aggression, the power. I want to say Mokaev does it. I'm going to say Mokaev gets a 2nd round stoppage. I'll say he gets it done by TKO. And hold on, we're counting Mokaev as England, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So let's go.
The crowd's going to be counting them as England.
Let's go 2-0.
Your other option is to take a shot of vodka, and we got 11 more fights to talk about. So
yeah, at the end, I'm not even picking the main event. I'm picking the referee.
Like, yeah, definitely. We definitely aren't saying anything about Biloxi, though, because otherwise that's not far from me. And BKFC Belcher is going to come over here and like pop my head clean off. So, yeah, nothing against Mississippi. We head now to the featherweight division where Makwan Amirkhani will take on Jonathan Pearce. Amirkhani, the 33-year-old Finn training out of Dublin, Ireland, is 17-7 overall. He's 7-5 in the UFC. He is coming off a win. He choked Mike Grundy all the way to sleep at the last UFC London on March 19th. That puts an end to a 3-fight losing streak for him against Edson Barboza, Camuela Kirk, and Laron Murphy. He'll attempt to keep the good vibes going against the man who calls himself JSP. Pearce, the 30-year-old Tennessee native, is 12-4 overall. He's 1-3 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. No, I apologize. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of the third season of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his debut, gave us one of the last shining examples of the mythical deadly creature known as first round Joe Lozon. Since then, he has been perfect with 3 straight wins over Kai Kamaka, Omar Morales, and Christian Rodriguez. The most recent of those, the Rodriguez win, was a unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night Walker versus Hill back in February. Pearce is a comfortable favorite here. He's minus 220. Mr. Finland plus 175. Keith, I'm going to throw this fight to you for your pick first, but whoever you think wins this fight and whatever you think happens next for both these guys, Makwan Amirkhani never quite made it to the heights that the UFC hoped. I think they saw a bit of Conor McGregor Jr. in him. He's a guy from SBG Ireland. Obviously, he's a grappler by preference, where McGregor's a striker, but he's an exciting grappler. Had kind of a charming, cocky personality. Sure. I mean, he calls himself Mr. Finland, like there's never been another fighter from Finland. Yeah. And I'm not the best judge, but I understand that he's a very good-looking guy. All the elements of stardom were there if he would just win some fights. And while he's won more than he's lost, he's never really strung together enough to generate excitement to go with the personality. Nonetheless, does he get enough done here to, maybe keep his job, keep the interest level, or does Pearce have his number?
Yeah, so he's never got over that hump. Like he beat the mid-level guys, never could beat the top guys. But being like a more than 2-1 underdog against Jonathan Pearce, that's really surprising. Especially because then he just won his last fight in first round stoppage. Amirkhani, as you mentioned, he's a grappler, but on the feet, he's a southpaw that he stays busy with a jab. He kind of throws it from his hips, bit of an up jab, but all his striking is just to close the distance, where he's a very aggressive wrestler. I've said it before, he'll shoot 1,000 times. He has fast entries, but he doesn't really set him up with it because of his lack of his striking. In the fight against Lerone Murphy hurt him because of his lack of striking. If he does get the fight to the ground, he's pretty strong on the ground. He does have a good top game, strong ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He's got 13 subs in his career. He loves to attack in scrambles. Anaconda chokes, Darce chokes. I mean, we saw that in his last fight against Mike Grundy, where he caught him in a Darce choke. But because such an aggressive, heavy grappling style, he has gassed out in the past, and he has and you gotta be a little worried about his chin, because he has taken loads of damage. I mean, Edson Barboza, Jason Knight, Shane Burgos, Lerone Murphy, like they've all had a lot of success landing big shots on him. So that's concerning. And he's also getting up there in age now. Jonathan Pearce was a guy. I've come around on Pearce. He's better than I thought he was when he first debuted. I mean, the guy, if you had any confidence, when you get smoked by Joe Lozon at that point in Joe Lozon's career, you kind of lose all confidence in the guy. But he has shown improvement each fight. He's a much better athlete than I thought he was. On the feet, busy jab. He follows him up with strong, straight shots down the pipe. He'll even toss out like a flying knee because he just wants to pressure you back to get you to the cage where he can close the distance and get some takedowns. He does throw a lot of kicks, especially the body, and that's because he doesn't mind you kind of grabbing a kick and creating a scramble. He will close the distance, grinding against the clinch. He's a bigger guy, kind of uses his size in those close quarter, land some striking, some knees up the middle. He will look for some body lock takedowns. That's more where he gets the fight to the ground, kind of drag you down to the ground. He's not an explosive wrestler where he kind of like drives through your hips, but he has that determination and mindset to get the fight to the ground. I've seen him throw out some suplexes, which when he was on the regional scene stuff, I hate that. I just think it's a waste of energy. But the fight hits the ground, he's got some good top control. Very pin you down first before he looks to wear you down with some ground and pound. He does have some good ground and pound after he wears you down a little bit. When he is taken down, he's pretty good at getting back up. As far as predictions go, I think this is a tough fight to pick because they have similar styles. If you told me 3 years ago they were fighting, I would take Amirkhani with tons of confidence. I'm still worried about Pearce shooting a takedown on Amirkhani and getting caught with a guillotine, getting caught with a dart stroke, something in a scramble. But I'm going to go with Pearce. He's younger. He's bigger. He looks like the fighter that's getting better at this point in his career, and he has the deeper gas tank. So give me Pearce and land a little bit more on the feet, maybe win some grappling exchanges late. I'm taking him win by a decision, but I'm taking with not a lot of confidence, especially not, what do you say, negative 225? Like, I'm not that confident in that.
I know we're kind of looking for the first time we really disagree on this card. This ain't it. I agree that the line should be a little closer. While Amirkhani's last outing, at UFC London back in March, was super short, it was pretty heartening. Just, if nothing else, he showed up in good shape. He showed up motivated. He was aggressive, and he did the thing that Makwan Amirkhani wins fights with. He's a good offensive wrestler, but he's also just, very aware and opportunistic when opportunities present themselves for himself to get opponents in submission trouble. I'm tempted to take him over Pearce here. Like, Pearce still makes mental mistakes that a veteran like Amirkhani can definitely take advantage of to tap him out, or at least to win rounds. But you're right. Pearce is younger. He feels like someone who's still improving, where Amirkhani at best has plateaued. This is a step up for Jonathan Pearce. I mean, 3-0 or a 3-fight win streak is a 3-fight win streak in the UFC lightweight division. Any easy outs in that division are, relatively speaking, but Kai Kamaka, Omar Morales, and Christian Rodriguez, like, the jury's still out on Rodriguez, but Kamaka and Morales were both in the midst of like long winless runs, or like long with like 1-5 runs when Pearce got them. If the Amirkhani that we get here is the one that we saw back in March, this will be the toughest challenge of Pearce's UFC run. I'm just picking him to be up to the challenge. Amirkhani remains tough, remains durable, unless he really gasses himself out and Pearce is just able to pelt him to death late. I do see this going to the judges, but give me Pearce by a pretty clear-cut decision. And I don't think it goes to the ground very often unless Pearce wants it there. We stay in the men's featherweight division for a matchup between Nathaniel Wood and Charles Rosa. Wood, the 28-year-old from London, is 17-5 overall. He's 4-2 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Cage Warriors bantamweight champ. He has alternated wins and losses in his last 4. Wins over Jose Alberto Quinones and John Castaneda, balanced against losses to John Dodson and Casey Kenny. The most recent of those, the Kenny loss, was at UFC 254 back in October of 2020. So it has been a little over 18 months since we've seen Wood. He gets back against Rosa. Rosa, a 35-year-old from Peabody. Is Peabody Greater Boston, Keith?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Otherwise, Boston Strong was a deceptive nickname. So, well, I don't know if he's strong or not.
You know what I've said about. It's pretty ironic for the guy who does his training camps and has lived in New England in a really long time to have the Boston nickname.
At any rate, Rosa, 14-7 overall, 5-7 since joining the UFC a few years back. For the most part, he's alternated wins and losses, but he is mired in the first losing streak of his career. Those coming against Damon Jackson last October at UFC Fight Night Dern versus Rodriguez, and TJ Brown, who took a unanimous decision over him back in January at UFC on ESPN, Cater versus Chikadze. Wood, another one of the bigger favorites on the card. He is minus 450. Rosa plus 360 as the underdog. Keith, Nathaniel Wood, stepping up to featherweight here. I mean, do you think it was the right move to move up to featherweight? Do you think he had finally hit a ceiling at 135? And do you think he gets it done here against Rosa?
Yeah, I got to correct myself. I just looked up where Peabody is. It's actually a lot more north than I thought it was. It's like 25 minutes from downtown Boston. So I don't know if that counts as great. So I could be wrong. I mean,
East Coast is so funny, man.
It's close to Lynn, and Lynn is definitely greater Boston. So maybe.
I'm 40 minutes from downtown Houston, and there are 3 more suburbs north of me that people commute all the way into town from.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. What was the question you asked me?
Do you think the move for Nathaniel Wood up to featherweight was the right move, and who do you think wins here?
Yeah. I'm especially at a younger age. I'm okay with that. Like I don't care about a guy moving weight classes at that point of their career. It's the late move where it's like when it's desperation. Like he's on a nice little run right now. So wait, let's see how many fights in a row has he won? Oh, he lost his last fight. He lost to Casey Kenny. What the hell am I talking about? You even said that. You know what happened? He was supposed to fight Vince Morales, and Morales pulled out. And I think I just put it in my head that was a win for him. Yeah, I'm all screwed up. I screwed up on Peabody. It's always good to go up in weight class if your opponent's going to be Charles Rosa. That's always a good idea. Charles Rosa. What can I say about Charles Rosa? He's got this karate bladed stance style where he's pretty light on his feet. He's got good movement. He's pretty elusive. Has a lot of variety in strikes, like where he kind of attacks with a lot of things, but they're very single strikes, very point style. His best strike is probably that Holly Holm sidekick, but he's kind of slow. His hands are slow. He's taken god awful amount of damage. I mean, Kyle Boshniak beat him up a little bit. Shane Burgos beat him up. Bryce Mitchell, Derek Minner, everybody has beat him up. That's because he hangs his hands low and he's not that fast. He will shoot for a takedown, but he isn't a powerful wrestler, and he's a weak defense wrestler. Now he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but legit, I have no clue how he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I mean, he did get a submission against Manny Bermudez once, and then like that changed the narrative about Charles Rosa, where he was like this great grappler. But the dude has been mauled on the ground by everybody else, like not just beaten, mauled. Bryce Mitchell, Derek Minner, Damian Jackson, TJ Brown, they didn't break a sweat against him on the ground. He can't get off bottom. And then as the fight goes on in the grappling and he's losing, this chance of him getting off from bottom becomes less and less as he starts to fade. I was just looking, like he recently had a grappling match and he lost that too. And it was to Julio Cesar Chavez. Isn't that a boxer? I'm
guessing it's not the same one.
No, it's not the boxer, because it wouldn't shock me if Charles Rosa lost the if Charles Rosa lost the grappling match to like Shane Mosley or Floyd Mayweather. Like, okay, like all right, maybe I'll favor him over Floyd Mayweather in a grappling match. I'm gonna get my ass kicked by Charles Rosa one day, just because I'm always bashing him on this network. He's like,
at least you know it's a pretty good drive from Peabody.
Yeah. At least I got a little bit of time. He's like a really nice guy. He's at the local fights and stuff. He's never done anything wrong to me. I've done interviews with him. He's a super nice guy, but I'm not a fan of his style. Like I just don't think he should. I think he should be fighting as a name in CES. I don't think he should be in the UFC anymore. As far as Nathaniel Wood, he's been out for so long that I forgot about him. And then I started giving him wins that he didn't have, because that's how long he's been out. It's from when we last seen him, and he's a good striker. He's long and lengthy, pretty crisp jab. He's one of the guys who actually leads a lot with his power shots. He likes to avoid shots with shoulder rolls, deep kicks up the middle. He mixes kicks and punches in well. He's an underrated wrestler. He looks for body lock takedowns, trips inside stuff. He will shoot from the outside, but he's from England, so he's not this powerful wrestler. But he's got some slick grappling, good submission game. He's got 5 submissions. So Nathaniel Wood is solid, being that he's now 28 and probably now entering his prime. You got to like him. He's been out for a long time, so it's hard to have a lot of confidence in him. And what'd you say he was as a favorite? Negative what?
Minus 450.
Minus 450. Like, I was going to say that he shouldn't be my classic line, he shouldn't be a negative 450 fighter against anybody. But then I realized he's fighting Charles Rosa. Anybody with any topside grappling game, which Nathaniel Wood has, should be a massive favorite against Charles Rosa at this point in their career. I expect Wood to close the distance, take the fight to the ground, take Rosa down. And the fight looks like pretty much of all Rosa's recent fights. Give me Wood in a lopsided decision.
I wish I had some disagreement for you here, but I really don't. And I do think the move up to 145 is probably the best thing for Wood. Even his last fight, the Casey Kenny fight, I'd forgotten, that was at 140-pound catch weight. And while he lost to Kenny, for one thing, it was a very close fight. Like a number of media members whose opinions I respect scored that one for Wood. And
which says a lot because Casey Kenny's good.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Casey Kenny is good, and it's not like Wood lost that because he was undersized. Kenny's another kind of pretty big bantamweight. They both agreed to fight at 140. I like this as a move for him.
Sorry to interrupt you. IQ, I know I'm terrible at it. I'm sorry. It should be a drinking game. Hit a shot anytime I interrupt you. Don't forget, Casey Kenny used to be, which is funny that he's bigger bantamweight. He used to be a flyweight.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I'm with you. Like the key to the blueprint for beating Charles Rosa in the UFC has kind of been laid out there. Or really, the fights he's won, it's either been people who've kind of let him do a slow-paced, like point kickboxing match on the feet and win rounds that way, or people who haven't even tried to get it to the ground. But you're right. All the decent grapplers he's fought have really, really dominated him down there. The Bryce Mitchell one, obviously one of the first real eye-opening fight night moments of the COVID era, because we could hear the two of them talking to each other. But Damon Jackson just dominated him with wrestling and grappling. Wood certainly has that avenue to victory here, and I expect him to do so. Rosa remains pretty tough to finish. I mean, Bryce Mitchell made him into a pretzel, but couldn't finish him. We're talking about Mitchell, who was like between twistering two different people, I think, and couldn't do that to Charles Rosa. Just kind of had to settle for a lopsided win. So I do expect this to reach the judges, but yeah, Wood by a lopsided decision.
England 3-0.
Next up, the lightweights take the cage, as it is Marc Diakiese versus Damir Hadzovic. Diakiese, the 29-year-old Brit, is 15-5 overall. He's 6-5 in the UFC. He did win his last time out. He fought at UFC on ESPN Blaydes versus Diakiese back in March, taking a unanimous decision over Slava Borshchov, one of the kind of buzzier prospects from last season of Dana White's Contender Series, but he squashed some of that buzz. That allowed him to turn things around from back-to-back losses to Rafael Fiziev and Rafael Alves. He'll try to keep the wins going against Hadzovic. The 35-year-old Bosnian is 14-6 overall. He is 4-4 in the UFC. He also is coming off a win, a unanimous decision over Yancy Medeiros a year ago at UFC Fight Night Gone versus Volkov. For him, as well as Diakiese, that put the brakes on a 2-fight losing streak. He had lost back-to-back fights to Christos Giagos and Renato Moicano. So he also looking to start a win streak. He is not favored to do so. Diakiese minus 300 as the favorite. Hadzovic plus 240 as the underdog. Keith, I'm going to throw this to you first, but every time I have to do film study on Marc Diakiese, anytime he has a fight coming up, anytime I'm forced to think about the guy, I'm always struck by two things. I'm always surprised at how young he is. I always expect him to be about 5 years older than he is. And I'm always surprised at how good he is compared to his UFC record. Like, he's barely over 500 in the UFC right now. He's 6-5 until he beat Borshchov. He was 5-5 in the UFC. But on the right night, he looks like a guy who could be a contender. And then I think, but it's too late for that. He's 36. I'm like, no, he's 28. Well, I mean, he's 29 now. Like, am I out of my mind? Do I need to give up on Marc Diakiese as a potential top 15 lightweight? And who gets it done here?
Honestly, you're asking the wrong guy, because he does that to you. Like, every time you give up on him, he'll have a really good showing in his next fight. And that's because he's well-rounded. He's athletic. He can fight out of both stances. He's quick. So like those are good things he does. And then he has moments where he just looks terrible. He has low output, like trigger shy. Some of the things he does do good. He has got really good right hand. He can work the body really good. Things that he does bad. His power is grossly overrated. Like, yes, he got some knockouts, but the UFC commentator we said this about him before. They make him seem like he's, a heavyweight out there landing on guys. He's got really good calf kicks. He gets inside. He can land some mean elbows, some step-in knees. Those are good things. One thing I really liked in his last fight is he showed he can wrestle. Like, where did that come from? He got 11 takedowns on his last fight. Obviously, if he got 11 takedowns, he probably needs to improve on some of his top control. That means his opponent would be able to get up a lot. But overall, that was something I really liked. Strong takedown defense. Really quickly get back to his feet. But going back, he has been caught in submissions. Rafaelovs and Daniel Hooker both caught him with a guillotine, which is a little troublesome. Now, Hadzovic, I mean, if we're being honest, he's pretty much just a journeyman. UFC level journeyman. Obviously, I'm talking about like he does do some things I like. He's a pressure fighter that marches forward with good volume, tight strikes down the middle. Everything's inside tight. Throws a lot of power shots. One note I had him for a while that I love his like wraparound shots. Like he'll kind of hand fight and then wrap things around his opponent's defense. I like his step and knees. He has a high guard defense, which I don't like because he backs straight up. That's a little worrisome. He will sneak in a takedown, and that's because he's a very physically strong guy. I mean, he's a bigger guy, but he's got weak takedown defense. He's hard to hold down, so that's good. But when he's faced higher level competition like a Renato Moicano, he was quickly submitted. And even like a guy like Yancy Medeiros, a fight that favors him, he gassed out of that fight where that was troublesome. Like he was gassing late. So you ask, should someone give up on Diakiese? I have. It's hard to have any confidence on him, but if I'm betting, I'm really staying away from this because Hadzovic could easily just pressure him and outpoint him. Like that wouldn't shock me. But Diakiese should win. Like he's more technically sound fighter. Now that he wrestles, I feel much better about that. Like he has this huge, route to victory with his wrestling. So between being probably the better striker, the more explosive athlete, probably still has the power, and then definitely has the wrestling advantage. Give me Marc Diakiese. What's that? Is it 4 now? Or is it 3 or 4? 4-0 for England?
1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5.
5-0 for England. Okay, I'm sorry.
Or no, wait a minute. No, you didn't pick Amirkhani. I was counting him since he trains at SPG.
Oh, no,
so it's just 4. Yeah,
his name is Mr. Finland.
Yeah, Herbert, Mokaev, Wood, and now Diakiese.
All right.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the kind of newfound wrestling wrinkle. It's especially heartening because he did it against someone in Slava Borshchov who presented as a knockout striker. I mean, that's how he made waves on the Contender Series, and it's what he had shown on his way up. And Diakiese was like, I'm bigger and stronger than this guy. I can probably take him down. He did it effortlessly over and over again. You pointed out there's a little too much rinse and repeat to really be thrilled about it. I'm sure against someone, with a little better scramble ability, he could have ended up like gassing himself out. But I like that as an avenue to victory against Hadzovic here. He might be able to win a nip and tuck, low volume striking battle on the feet. Some of his UFC wins have been like that. But if he decides to embrace this newfound wrestling, I think that's a way for him to win this fight pretty easily. Either way, I do favor him as well. But like you, I don't feel 3-1 comfortable about it. But nonetheless, give me Diakiese by decision. Next up at UFC London, and at least as the card is currently constituted, the top prelim at UFC London is a quickly thrown together matchup between Mason Jones and Ludovit Klein. Jones, the 27-year-old Welshman, is 11-1 with 1 no contest. Overall, he is 1-1 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC as a former 2-division champ in Cage Warriors. He was previously the lightweight and welterweight champ there. He most recently took a unanimous decision over short notice opponent David Onama at UFC Fight Night Costa versus Vittori last October. Onama, a typical featherweight who stepped up on short notice to take that fight. Nonetheless, that's a win that certainly is continuing to age well for Jones. He'll try to keep things going against, well, he is the short notice opponent here, I guess, because Ludovit Klein was supposed to fight Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC 277 on July 30th. Bahamondes fell out of that fight, so Klein moved up by a week to the 23rd, and to London. Jones steps in to fight him. Klein, the 27-year-old Slovak, is 18-4 overall. He is an even 2-2 since joining the UFC. Wins over Shane Young and Devontae Smith, sandwiched around a pair of losses to Mike Trezano and Nate Landwehr. The most recent fight, that win over Smith, was back in March at UFC 272. Jones, one of the bigger favorites on the card. Well, I should stop saying that about 3-1 favorites because this card is full of 3-1 favorites. Jones, a big favorite, minus 340, Klein plus 260 on the comeback. Before I hand this to you, worth noting about Klein that he's 2-2 in the UFC, but both of his losses were at featherweight. When he has fought either at lightweight, as he did in his most recent fight against Devontae Smith, or at 150-pound catchweight, as he did in his debut against Shane Young, he's actually won. Here he's at 155, where he's undefeated in the UFC. So I guess we'll see. Keith, does he keep it going?
He might, man. This is a really, really good fight. Like, I can't believe Mason Jones is that big of a favorite. I think I'm higher in Klein than most people are. He's an athletic southpaw that's light on his feet, pretty technically sound. He uses feints really well, works behind a very crisp jab, good power. And that's because he keeps his legs on him. He always wins the leg battle, the foot position, I should say, so he can land some good shots. Good calf kicks, good kicks in general, but he likes to target the calves. His last fight, crushing body kicks. He throws some crushing high kicks. The thing that is worrisome is his inconsistency on the ground. I mean, against Mike Trezano, he looked terrible on the ground, and that's actually a fight I still thought he should have won that fight. But he did land some takedowns that fight himself, which is good. But the one that was really impressive was his last fight against Devontae Smith. He stuffed takedowns from Devontae Smith, which made you feel a lot better about his ground game and just him overall as a fighter because of that. Now, Mason Jones is another guy I really like. High output, pressure counter striker. He's a good boxer. He keeps everything inside tight. Nice jab, very slip and rip style. He gets in the pocket. When he slips a shot, he gets in, counters with combinations. I'd say plus power. He's a good wrestler, nice entries, gets to fight to the ground, strong ground and pound. If he is taken down, he does well to work back to his feet. He does have 2 submission wins. This is one of my favorite fights, just stylistically on the whole card. Like, I love this fight. If bad wrestling Klein shows up, then Mason could easily win this fight if he goes to wrestling. But if good wrestling Klein shows up, that kicking game is a big problem, especially Jones' style, just walking through, eating some of those shots, especially if he walks right into a head kick or something. Like Klein could put him out. I really want to take Klein in a pretty big upset, and man, I really do want to take him, but he needs to show me that he can stuff some takedowns, that he can deal with the pressure of Jones. I feel much better, as you mentioned, him fighting at 155. I feel much better that he's taking the fight with a full camp and Jones is taking the fight on short notice. But with that wrestling advantage in the output, I'm going to go with Jones by decision.
I love that you see the kind of upside in Klein here, because I see it for the same reasons you do. Primarily because Klein is working on a near full camp for this. You know, moving it up by a week shouldn't throw things that far out of whack, especially considering that he's not having a featherweight weight cut to deal with. And then we did the preview for the Jones versus Onama fight last October, where Onama stepped up like Glory MMA guys do on like 6 days notice to fight one of the hottest prospects in the UFC. And we both came out of that on the recap saying that, yeah, Jones won, but if anything, Onama might have helped his stock in a loss.
Onama's good though.
And Onama is good, but part of it is down to Mason Jones's, as you mentioned, tendency to walk through his opponent's offense to land his own. It means his fights are usually exciting, but they can be exciting to his detriment. Like his no contest against Alan Patrick, he was on his way to winning that fight, but Alan Patrick had more moments than he should have in the first round for an aged and shot fighter who otherwise would be in the middle of like a 5-fight losing streak. Like that ended on an eye poke, but Patrick was like looking better than he had against a lot of his other recent opponents. And it's again because Jones just never met a piece of his opponent's offense on the feet that he didn't want to try to sample. That spells trouble for me against Klein. Even though he is a 2-1 favorite here, I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer and take Klein to land more offense, at least more significant offense. Jones always throws plenty of volume, but Klein's strikes are going to be the ones that look like they hurt. It doesn't help that Mason Jones, probably gets a sunburn from like his cell phone if he looks at it at night. He's one of those like Welsh. Yeah, well, he's one of those like strawberry blonde Welsh dudes that he is bright red and looks like he's been hit by a truck after 90 seconds of pretty much every fight. So if Klein starts landing those leg kicks, the UFC booth's going to be talking about, look, his leg is already black and blue. He's bright red. And I don't know if on this kind of short altered training camp, if Jones is going to have what it takes to walk through that on his way to a win over a guy that's been on a full camp. So give me in a fairly substantial upset, Ludovit Klein by decision.
Yeah, I like it, man. This fight should be a pick'em. That's what I don't get the line. I feel like this fight should be a pick'em.
I think I'm overcompensating because I've picked against Klein in both of his wins, and I'm like, I'm not falling for this again. Because even now, part of me is like, he's a short and compact guy at featherweight. That's going to be even more so at lightweight. But then you know what? So is Rafael Fiziev, and he's doing all right. So yeah, I'm sticking with the Klein pick. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But
no, I like it.
The 6-fight main card of UFC Fight Night 208 kicks off with a light heavyweight matchup. Keith, all I'm going to say is Paul Craig and Alexander Gustafsson are both on this card, and one of them is ranked.
Yeah.
And it ain't Alexander Gustafsson.
Paul fucking Craig.
I love him.
I love
Paul
the guy.
Craig.
I love everything about him.
Paul Craig is fighting former UFC title challenger Volkan Oezdemir, and he is the red corner, the A side of this fight, the higher ranked fighter.
That's fantastic.
Paul fucking Craig.
I love everything about I love everything about him. I love the painted face. I love the in your face and the stand out. I like everything about this guy.
Dude, it's Paul Craig versus Volkan Oezdemir. Craig, the 34-year-old Scot, is 16-4-1 overall. He is 8-4-1 in the UFC. He is on a 4-fight winning streak. Those 4 coming over Gadzhimurad Antagulov, over Mauricio Shogun Rua in a rematch of their draw that was his last fight before this win streak, over Jamal Hill, and most recently, back at, again, the first UFC London card, Nikita Krylov, whom he triangled late in the first round.
Ironic that Krylov is higher up on this card than he is.
It is ironic that Krylov is higher up on the card than he is. He's going to try to make
that Jamal Hill win has aged well too.
Yes, it has. We'll get to that for sure. He's going to try to make it 5 in a row against Oezdemir. The 30-year-old Swiss light heavyweight is 17-6 overall. He is an even 5-5 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. In fairness to him, those are against your champ, Yuri Prohaska, and maybe your next champ or your champ in the near future, Magomed Ankalaev. The most recent of those, the Ankalaev fight, was a unanimous decision loss at UFC 267 back last October. Despite the losing streak, the 2-fight losing streak versus the 5-fight win streak, despite Craig being active while Oezdemir has fought twice in the last 2 years, Oezdemir is the slight favorite here. He is minus 150, Craig plus 125. And Keith, that is because as slow as I was to learn my lesson about Paul Craig, apparently other fans out there are even slower than me. Because again, the bookmakers aren't pulling these numbers out of their ass. They are coming up with a number that if it doesn't say who they think will win, it's designed to bring in action on both sides.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, there's enough people out there to make Volkan Oezdemir a minus 150 favorite here. And I frankly don't get it, because we've been doing these previews long enough that we remember when Paul Craig was a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
His whole MO was to get his ass kicked and pull out a Hail Mary submission.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the second round, but most often in the third round, or with 1 second left in the third round, as when he tapped out Ankalaev in, again, one of the more shocking fights of that year. But that is not Paul Craig anymore. He used to be a terrible striker that, let me get, like, he's always been slow on his feet. He's always had slow hands. He has gone from being an absolutely terrible striker to being a serviceable striker. He's not, it's no longer just a horrible liability for him. He is, more importantly, he's shored up some of his defensive problems and his approach on the feet. Like, I don't know if he's like a better striker. I don't know if he looks any better hitting the bags in the gym now than he did in 2017. But I know that he no longer just marches forward and gets just chewed up like going headfirst into a wood chipper in all of his fights. He's a little more patient on the feet. He positions himself a little better. I mean, obviously the Jamal Hill fight ended kind of quickly and strangely, but there are versions of Paul Craig that would have been knocked out by Jamal Hill in that amount of time anyway. He's not that guy anymore. There are versions of Paul Craig that would have been head kicked by Nikita Krylov before, he tapped him out in the first round. His striking has gotten good enough that he is now looking for his 5th straight win in the UFC light heavyweight division. And he's doing it in another, even though he's been on hard times, Oezdemir is still like a top 10, at least top 10 quality guy, not that far removed from being in the title picture. But I think this is going to be a bit of a coming out party for Craig. Like, I could see Oezdemir just hitting him with one of his huge haymakers or kicks, but that's basically his best and only route to victory. And I don't think that's an automatic against Paul Craig anymore. I think Craig is probably going to hold his own in the striking and look for a chance to get this thing to the ground. He's probably going to need to do it out of some sort of collision or scramble or, grab something out of the clinch. He still isn't the guy that shoots from outside, but I also think that Craig is probably going to get stronger as the rounds go along, while Oezdemir is probably going to gas out. So give me Paul Craig by a vintage Paul Craig thing. Probably a submission off his back in the third round in a fight that he was already winning on points.
Yeah, I love that. Man, this, first of all, why are these guys getting dogged? Being the first fight, like, I think it should be the co-main event. Like, especially the way Paul Craig, the run he's on. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. We always talk about, how many guys down before a guy answers the phone for the title shot, like how many phone calls you're making. Paul Craig wins this fight. He is 2-3 phone calls away. Like, if you're matching up Prohaska, maybe you're calling Blachowicz first, then you're probably calling Smith. I mean, you could actually make an argument for him over Ankalaev, but the Smith Ankalaev winner, and then it's probably Paul Craig if he wins.
If he wins, is Paul Craig closer to a title shot than anyone on the card outside of the main event? He's closer to a title shot than Hermanson if he wins.
Oh, absolutely.
Krylov.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I said. Paul Craig should be high. It should have, honestly, I understand Oezdemir is a tougher challenge than Alexander Gustafsson at this point, but if you're putting Krylov higher in the card because he's going against Gustafsson, obviously a guy who's headlined UFCs and almost beat John Jones. Well, I shouldn't say almost, but you know what I'm saying? Like, had moments. He's got his fights in the UFC Hall of Fame. If you're giving Gustafsson the higher spot, Craig probably should have got the fight against Gustafsson, not Krylov, but that's neither here nor there. No, and then Oezdemir, he's a tough test for Craig. I mean, he really is. Like he's a minus athlete. That's because he's a little flat-footed. He's plodding. He's actually kind of slow on the feet, but he makes up for it with earth-shattering power. I mean, he marches forward with good output. He's a good boxer that has power in both of his hands. His left hook is like his kill switch. His short right hand, it's kind of like a Shane Corrin short right hand. He touches you, he puts you out. He gets in the pocket. He's a good dirty boxer, mean dirty boxer. Some good clinch fighting, and we talk about. Well, hold on, I'm going to save that point for later. He will wrestle a little bit, not often, but he will wrestle a little bit. He got takedowns against Dominic Reyes. He got takedowns against Anthony Smith. But he has been taken down in like half his UFC fights, so that's a little concerning. But he's going to get some really good wrestlers. If he's on top, he has got some good top control. He isn't a submission threat, though. He only has one career sub. Then you move over to – I got to leave Paul Craig second because, build up to the breakdown on Paul Craig. Dude, I'm just loving this run. Like, how far this run's going to run, I don't know. But it's really fun. He's a really big dude. I mean, he looks like a heavyweight. He's massive. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't pack power for a guy who's built like him. He kind of throws arm punches. He's got some huge defensive holes. He's a huge target. He keeps his chin high. I disagree on his striking. I think some of the reason why he's landing a little bit now is because he's become such a submission threat that it forces guys to kind of hang their hands a little bit low, worried about maybe possible takedowns. But what I think he has added recently is a much better kicking game. He throws a lot of kicks from the outside, walking forward behind kicks to kind of close the distance. He does throw them naked, and he's going to get smashed open counter. And he has taken God knows the amount of damage. You talk about his style, like get beat up until the guy's tired of hitting you, and then you find a submission. I wonder how long he can take that. Now, and for a guy who wants to get to the fight to the ground, he isn't a strong wrestler. He kind of hopes his opponent catches its kick and takes him down, or he'll even pull guard, and that's because he has one of the greatest guards in the history of the sport, if we're being honest. I mean, when a fight hits the ground and he's in a close guard, it feels like Royce Gracie in the early UFC days, where somehow being on bottom is now an advantage. And he can get subs anyway. You relax for a second. It takes 1 minute, 1 second, and he's on a submission.
And if I can interject, as slow as he is on the feet, he is shockingly fast. Like his hips and legs are shockingly fast when he decides to move on the ground.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of sneaks them in the position. Yeah. Just wanted to throw that in there.
It's funny because we've done a little theme on this card. We talked about Victoria Leonardo and the competition she's faced. We talked about there was Jay Herbert, who he's faced. How about the competition that Volkan Oezdemir has faced in his run? I was looking at his record today. Who's the worst fighter Volkan Oezdemir has fought so far in the UFC?
Probably like Latifi or somebody.
Misha Serkinov.
Yeah.
Latifi.
And 2017 Serkinov was pretty good.
Yeah, that's the No, that was an upset when he came in. That was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll go with Latifi. Ilia Latifi is the worst fighter this guy's faced in the UFC. Good.
The flip side of that is those fights have shaken out pretty predictably for him. I mean, what's his best win in the UFC? And don't say Rakic because I don't say robbery easily, but I thought he won all 3 rounds against Rakic.
Well, OSP was probably at that time. That time was a pretty good
OSP,
one.
Yeah, or lamping Jimmy Manoa.
Manoa at the time. That's going back. Yeah, that was a good win at that time. Yeah, probably Manoa. Because Manoa was on a nice little run up. Was that the fight that got him the title shot? Was it Manoa?
That was the one. That was Cormier fight was after Manoa. But dude, that was 2017.
Yeah. So that was
Yeah.
like Nana was supposed to win that one to get the title shot.
Mhm.
I mean, that little like spat with Cormier at was the UFC 210 in Buffalo. Where Cormier was kind of like sit down, Jimmy Manuwa. Now over to Craig. I said it. I honestly feel like this might be the fight that the listeners are going to be most interested to see who we pick. Because how do you not like Paul Craig? I've said it over and over again that I'm not going to be tricked and pick against him. Like, how many times am I going to get tricked by this guy? He's simply better than I always thought he is. It's just that's how he is. But then when I watch film study on him, I say I got to do it again. I got to pick against him. Oezdemir really cracks. That's the one thing about him. And Craig usually weathers the storm and then finds a sub. But what if he doesn't? What if he gets cracked and he doesn't get a chance to weather? I'm going to say that's what happened. I'm going to lean with Oezdemir. I'm going to say he eventually, like, you can't keep getting blasted and then come get a submission. Eventually, it's going to fall apart. I'm going to say it happens now. This is our first disagreement. I'm going to go with Oezdemir. I'm going to say he does in the very first round. I say he catches him with something early. First round knockout for Oezdemir.
There you go. Our first dissension. What is this? 9 fights into the 14 fight card. But yeah, that's what you come here for, right? The UFC London main card powers on with a women's flyweight matchup between Molly McCann and Hannah Goldy. McCann, the 32-year-old from Liverpool, the one almost assured to get the biggest pop of any fighter on the card, main event notwithstanding, is 12-4 overall. She is 5-3 since joining the UFC as the outgoing Cage Warriors flyweight champ. She is coming off of back-to-back wins over Ji-Yeon Kim and Luana Carolina. You may remember the Carolina fight because it was at the last UFC London. It was a knockout of the year candidate that's still in my top 3 or 4. Hit her with a spinning back elbow in the 3rd round that laid Carolina out cold for the count, like smelling salts. So got to remember that one. She's going to try to make it 3 straight against Goldy, the 33-year-old Floridian who was born Hannah Goldschmidt. Why did she change it? Probably so Alex Nicholson wouldn't think she was Jewish. 6-2 overall. 1-2 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. She debuted in the UFC with back-to-back losses. Those were unanimous decisions to Miranda Granger and Diana Belbitsa before finally getting her first win last September over Emily Whitmire. Tapped out Whitmire late in the 1st round with an armbar at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann. She's been out for about 10 months since then, but she's going to try to make it 2 straight against McCann. Odds do not favor her to do so. McCann, another prohibitive favorite. She is out there minus 400 right now. You can get Goldy around plus 310 or plus 315 if you so choose. Keith, who have you got in this matchup?
Sorry, dude. I smacking my mic when you made the Alex Nicholson joke. Good for you, brother. Yeah. Sorry. I'm still recovering from that. That was a good one. That was one of your best ones.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I got a question. You said that you think Molly McCann's gonna get the biggest applause. You think it's be over Paddy?
Well, she and Paddy go as a pair. They're both from Liverpool. They're best buds. I'm thinking of their moment at the last UFC London. So her shared with Pimblett, but for sure.
If Pimblett wins and she wins and she jumps in the cage and
they're like slugging beer back and the UFC's trying to mop beer off the
Klein moment. As much as I'm like, I don't think either one's that good. It's great for the UFC if that shit happens. Molly McCann, what a personality! She's grown on me, and I'm glad that she should never fight outside of England again, like ever, like refusal,
sure.
The first she can go is like Wales or the UK is in the UK bubble. That's it. Like she can't fight anywhere else because we don't appreciate it like they do over there.
No.
She's a fighter. She can fight out of both stances. I think she fights out of both stances though, more because of like bottled up energy in her than it is like a game plan technique thing. It's just I think it's like nervous energy for her. She constantly darts in and out of range, kind of like a 2000s version of Clay Guida. She's getting in, she's getting out, she's moving around, she's doing a bunch of movement that doesn't really matter. But when she gets in the pocket, she unloads hard, big combos. She's willing to eat a shot to land one of her own. Though, in fairness, in her last fight against Carolina, she did show some really improved head movement. Like that was like the one note besides the incredible knockout, which what a moment for her. But it really stood out to me that she started showing some defensive skills. She fights at an insane pace. She throws nonstop power shots. She is heavy on her lead leg, which gives her power, but also going back to like the Talia Santos, she gets her legs destroyed. She would get destroyed with teep kicks. Again, that loss has aged very well, but she will close the distance and use her strength. I mean, she's a very strong woman, just to wear on her opponent in the clinch. She likes to battle in close quarters. She will wrestle, but like I said, I forget who else I said it. She is British, so there's a sailing to her wrestling. It's she also struggles to stop takedowns. I mean, she gave up 7 takedowns to Laura Procopio. She gave up 5 takedowns to Talia Santos, so that's troublesome. If she's put on her back, though, she really struggles. She struggled to get Talia Santos off. Again, so did Valentina Shevchenko, so that might not look that bad. What I love about her is the cardio, though. Like, she can have this grindy style and do it for all 15 minutes. Now, move over to Hannah Goldy. I'm not going to say anything different than this. I'm literally going to read my last notes because she was supposed to fight and the fight fell through, so nothing changed. I mean, the thing about Hannah Goldy now, like, she is ripped. I mean, we made a joke, said she was like the William Knight workout plan last time. She's got muscle on muscle, lots of movement, a very in and out style, hit and move kind of style. Fairly fast hands, but for someone who's so ripped, she doesn't have power. They're all arm punches. She also has some defensive holds. She pulls her head straight back. She kind of pulls her punches when she throws. She throws a lot of kicks. She has a Taekwondo style, but she keeps her chin in the air. She's got weak takedown defense. She doesn't like pressure when she's getting kind of bullied around. She's an okay grappler. I mean, she got 2 takedowns on Diana Belbita, but she was taken down twice by Emily Whitmire. But in fairness to her, she did catch a submission on Whitmire. So as far as prediction goes, like, Molly McCann is never fighting for UFC title. I mean, the only way she fights for UFC title is Valentina Shevchenko's fighting against somebody who actually deserves the title shot in England. That person pulls out and they're like, hey, throw Molly in there. She's not good. Like, she should. How big of a favorite you said she was?
Minus 400 is McCann.
Like, she should not be a minus 400 favorite. Maybe minus 150. I think she's better than Hannah Goldy. I do. I think she'll beat her with volume. She's, as you mentioned, she's going to get a huge pump from the crowd. She seems like someone who can kind of she doesn't seem like the person who get nervous under that. She's one of these people who seems like she would rise under that pressure. Mm-hmm. I say she wins a decision, but if you ever want to take, I mean, you already did it with Klein a little bit, but if you're a big gambler and if you want to take a flyer on a huge, massive underdog, this could be the one. I'm chickening out. I'm taking McCann by decision. And in everything I said is not like being nice to Hannah Goldy. Like, Hannah Goldy is not that good. It's just Molly McCann shouldn't be a negative 450 favorite.
Okay, even though I'm picking the actual result of the fight the same as you, I do see it a little differently. I see Goldy's main routes to victory here being something that not many people have done to McCann. Like, Goldy's not going to win a striking battle in the pocket here. I don't know if Goldy is going to be able to keep McCann at the range that she can throw the kind of kicks she wants to. And while, McCann's UFC debut, she got choked to sleep by Jillian Robertson. So, like, obviously, certainly Goldy could, like, snatch something up, from the bottom and tap her out like she did to Emily Whitmire in her last fight. It's been a long time since that happened to McCann. I see this fight just playing out as kind of a kickboxing match that takes place a lot more in McCann's preferred range than in Goldy's. Probably doesn't go to the ground unless McCann wants it there. And so, again, I don't think she should be a minus 400 favorite either, but this is about as safe a win as you could find for Molly McCann in the flyweight division for me right now, especially considering that Mandy, Bohm, and Victoria Leonardo are already busy that night. Like, I think this is a pretty well-crafted matchup to get McCann a feel-good win in front of the London crowd. But yeah, give me McCann by decision as well. Before we start to talk about the next fight, let it be known that Keith did take another shot of tea between segments here in honor of Molly McCann, both of us picking her. But next up on the UFC London main card is a light heavyweight matchup between Nikita Krylov and Alexander Gustafsson. Krylov, the 30-year-old Ukrainian, is 27-9 overall. He is 8-7 across two separate stints with the UFC. 8-7 overall, 7-6 at light heavyweight. He did fight his first two fights at heavyweight, going 1-1. So 7-6 at light heavyweight. 2-4 since rejoining the UFC this time. Though, in fairness to him, one of the themes this evening has been Keith and me talking about fighters who have just faced an absolutely brutal slate of competition. Now, granted, in the case of Krylov, this is second time in the UFC, so his strengths and weaknesses were kind of more of a known quantity. But since rejoining the UFC, Jan Blachowicz, Ovin St. Preux, Glover Teixeira, Johnny Walker, Magomed Ankalaev, and Paul Craig. We have champ, former champ, possibly your next champ, top 10 fighter in Craig.
Future champion, Hall of Famer Paul Craig.
Yeah, future champ and Hall of Famer Paul Craig. And the other two fights, the Walker and St. Preux fights, those are the ones that Krylov won. And those guys were both kind of 10 to 15 range guys at the time. Like, 2-4, better than it looks.
That's right.
He'll try to make that number a little better against Gustafsson, the one-time number 2 guy in the division, whose high watermark Keith already alluded to earlier, coming agonizingly close to taking the belt from John Jones. 35-year-old
probably even closer against Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, there you go. Like, actually had Daniel Cormier in like trouble, not just, hey, this fight is close on the scorecards. No, good call. Former 2-time title challenger, 18-7 overall, 10-7 in the UFC, 10-6 as a light heavyweight. Opposite of Krylov, he fought his first 16. Yeah,
I just realized he fought for the title 3 times. He fought Jones twice. He fought Jones twice. Remember?
Oh, yeah, of course. The second one was for Jones had the belt back already. So 0-3 in UFC light heavyweight title shots. Whew. Rough times. He started his first 16 fights in the UFC at light heavyweight. He did try moving up to heavyweight. Well, after retiring, I mean, his loss to Anthony Smith in June of 2019. So 3 years ago, he retired in the cage. After that one, that was in Stockholm, wasn't it? That was in front of his hometown crowd that he got choked out by Smith, retired in the cage, changed his mind, came back in summer of 2020 at heavyweight, took on Fabricio Verdum, got tapped out in the first round. This is him saying, okay, for really real this time, I'm coming back again, but it's back at light heavyweight. And he is not the favorite here. Nikita Krylov, minus 190. Alexander Gustafsson, plus 160 on the comeback. Keith, I'm definitely going to throw this one to you first, but that Nikita Krylov is a favorite over Gustafsson here says a lot about what the public thinks, primarily of Gustafsson. I think Nikita Krylov is a known quantity at this point. We know what he is. What he is a mystery. He is a scream at the TV fighter because, scream at the TV fighter, capable of losing just a horrible, like weird, embarrassing fight one night and then lancing a top 10 guy the next. So for him to be almost a 2-1 favorite over Alexander Gustafsson, I think says more about where the public feels Gustafsson is physically and competitively. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this and to let me know whether either of these guys have any life in them in terms of a contender run.
Yeah, I have a lot of issues with Alexander Gustafsson. Obviously, you mentioned the Anthony Smith fight. He got his ass handed to him. He looked terrible, like the worst he's ever looked. Then retires, comes back, goes against a pretty much shot for Fabricio Verdum, or close to shot for Fabricio Verdum. Gets submitted in like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, something like that. Then he gets scheduled against Ben Rothwell. So it wasn't like automatic, like, oh, I learned that I'm not a heavyweight. No, he gets scheduled against Ben Rothwell. That fight falls apart, and then he decides to come down to light heavyweight. So it's kind of weird. Let me ask you this.
I was wrong, by the way. When the Rothwell fight fell apart, I said, if we ever see Gustafsson again, it'll be at heavyweight from here on out. He's never going to try 205 again. And I was wrong, assuming he makes 205.
I actually think it's still probably the better move for him. But let me ask you this, which is going to kind of contradict what I'm going to say right now. Has Alexander Gustafsson ever looked worse than he has his last time we saw him at 205?
The Smith fight?
Yeah.
No, and that's the only time in his entire UFC run that he fought badly and looked bad.
Well, the second John Jones fight, he looks pretty bad. But it's John Jones.
I'm gonna say that's just more an indication of how much better a fighter John Jones is than he is. I think the first fight was his high watermark because he was less of a known quantity. Jones was coming in freely admitting having just like snorted coke and drank his way through camp and barely trained, and that was enough for him to win 2 rounds off of that version of John Jones.
So let me ask you this though. So we just agreed that Alexander Gustafsson has never looked worse. It's fairly safe to say that he might be a shot fighter. That established. Has he ever had a better chance of winning the light heavyweight title, than he does right now?
No, John Jones is nowhere to be seen. And he is fighting a contender's fight against the most unreliable top 15 fighter in the division.
Yeah. So the light heavyweight division is the glamour division in the history of the UFC.
Sure.
But has there ever been a worse time to be in the division in the span that he was, when the champions were John Jones and Daniel Cormier? I mean, This is a division that had Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Vitor Belfort. Like, these are the champions. Shogun, Lyoto Machida, Quentin Jackson. I mean, Forrest Griffin. Like, it is a unbelievable legends of legends. And he was the number 2 guy behind, or really, should say the number 3 guy, but always the bridesmaid, because those 2 guys.
He was the number 2 guy until Cormier dropped to.
Heavyweight. But that's the run he was on. So he actually probably. If you told me, I feel the same way. If you told me that a year from now, Alexander Gustafsson never fights again in the UFC, I go, yeah, okay. Like, I give it about a 50% chance. If you told me Alexander Gustafsson wins the title a year from now, I might not give it a 50% chance, but like, I wouldn't be. If he wins the title, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, that was just basically what the point I was trying to make. Now, everything I said is going to sound really contradiction. So let me pull back the curtain. Like, we watch film study on 14 fights, 28 fighters. Like, you have to sacrifice some fights, and I kind of rank which fights I want to look at first and run out of time. Listen, I work a full-time job. I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. They have sporting events. I go to church. I have to run, everyday life errands, cut the grass. I change my wife's brakes and routers. And I mean, this is all the shit you got to do through a week, Mm-hmm. I skipped this fight, and my whole point is, like, I ran out of time and I skipped this fight. And the whole reason I skipped this fight is I remember watching an interview recently where Alexander Gustafsson was talking about Chimaev, training with Chimaev. And he said, he was talking about Chimaev and all this crazy things he does. And he's like, and like sparring with him and how crazy it was. And he goes, and this was during my prime. And I go, wow, like, you're actually admitting you're not in your prime anymore? And like, if you don't think you're in prime, like, should I be excited about you? Like, how motivated are you? Like, you retired? Like, is this just a paycheck for you? So most of my analysis on him is just off of memory. I mean, what I last saw him against, and again, at heavyweight's much different. He's, he's always been athletic, light on his feet, longer. Obviously, he's a huge guy. I mean, that's why he was able to go up to heavyweight. Snapping jab, but he slowed down a lot against Anthony Smith. He's always had pretty good takedown defense, but he didn't against Fabricio Verdum. Verdum took him down and submitted him. Krylov is a good athlete. He's pretty well rounded. He's light on his feet. He's elusive. He's got some fast hands. He does hang his hands low, which is troublesome. He throws a lot of kicks, but I am unsure. Like we talk about inconsistency, I'm unsure about his wrestling. He looks like this great wrestler one fight and then terrible the next. I started looking at his stats in the UFC, and I was like, wow, he's got 10 takedowns in the UFC. Like he's a really good wrestler. Then I look and go, yeah, he's also been taken down 20 times, which is really surprising. Like, he's been taken on twice as many times as he's actually landed takedowns. I know I always bring it up, but I always bring up the OSP fight. OSP mounted him, which is really troublesome for a high-level fighter. But he is a really good submission threat. He's got 15 subs on his record. I mean, he almost submitted Ludovit to share. Like, that's how good he is. As far as prediction go, I hate this fight. One guy is super inconsistent. The other guy just seems disinterested, who went up to heavyweight and then went back to 205. And I don't know, man. Anybody who's making a prediction – the whole thing about Gustafsson, where I started saying this is the closest he has of actually probably winning a title, makes me want to take him now. And if obviously if you're the UFC, that's what you're rooting for Gustafsson to win. But I'm gonna go with Krylov. I'm gonna say Krylov outworks him on the feet. In there, if this is prime Gustafsson, then I would take Gustafsson easily. But this might have a Misha Tate look with him, where he's just a shot fighter fighting a fighter who's not completely shot. So give me Krylov. I'm gonna say it's gonna be an ugly decision.
I'm with you on this one. You know, like spoilers. I'm picking Krylov in this fight, and I mentioned that if you're Alexander Gustafsson in this division right now, it's about as favorable as it gets. You know, you're a 3-time former title challenger, so the UFC would probably let you slalom the contenders a little bit towards another title shot, especially considering that there's no one personality that's just taken over the division in the post John Jones era. And in your contender fight here, you're taking on the most unreliable fighter in the light heavyweight top 15. That's Nikita Krylov. The thing to me about this fight is, I think if good Nikita Krylov shows up, he's going to lamp Alexander Gustafsson. If bad Nikita Krylov shows up, I think he still wins. So I wouldn't touch this fight with a 10-foot pole if I were, you know, if I were inclined to bet on it. This isn't a fight I would touch, but I am favoring Krylov in this one. It's hard to believe he's only 30, and it's because he's been in the UFC in two different stints in the UFC, and he was so young when he started. I think he may have been 21. He may only have been 20 when he fought Soa Paleli in one of the worst fights in UFC history, just showing up as like a 238-pound kind of pudgy guy. And that was when his fight finder photo was still him in like a trench coat and a hat and like UFC gloves, even though he wasn't in the UFC yet. And his nickname was the Fighting Al Capone. Man, I'm glad those days are over. Yeah, good Gustafsson. Like, if this fight took place in like 2017, Gustafsson would murder Krylov. But that's just not the Gustafsson we have anymore. I don't trust his gas tank. He's never been a high power guy. Like, you know, he's always had stinging punches, but, you know, he was never like a real like one-shot knockout artist. Whereas Krylov can be. Like, if one guy lamps the other with a single kick or punch, it's absolutely going to be Krylov. I'm going to say the wheels fall off for Gustafsson here. Give me Nikita Krylov by second round TKO. Just Gustafsson comes out looking flat, gets tired inexplicably early. Maybe it was a really tough weight cut. Krylov is having a good night and just starts putting on him fairly early, knocks him out in the second round.
Let me ask you this.
Sad.
Let me ask you this. If Gustafsson wins, how many wins does he need before he gets a title shot?
One more.
Yeah, I was going to say that. 2. Krylov, and then like a guy a little bit ranked. Like, honestly, they could probably put him against Goldy to share rematch.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. You know, their first fight was.
Or he could fight the winner of Craig and Oezdemir.
That'd be perfect. He hasn't fought either of them yet, has he? It's kind of saying something that he and Oezdemir have never fought each other, considering how long they sort of orbited the top 5, top 10 together. There you go. Third from the top at UFC London is a lightweight matchup between Paddy Pimblett and Jordan Leavitt. Pimblett, the 27-year-old Liverpudlian, is 18-3 overall. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC as a former featherweight and lightweight champ in Cage Warriors. He fought most recently in March, of course, at the last UFC London, where he choked out Rodrigo Vargas late in the first round. Had a little easier going than in his UFC debut last September, where he and Luigi Vendramini actually were teeing off on each other, but he did end up being the last man standing. He will attempt to make it 3 in a row and send the hype train rocketing forward against Leavitt. The 27-year-old American is 10-1 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of the 4th season of Dana White's Contender Series. Debuted slamming Matt Wyman back into retirement in December of 2020. He then lost a unanimous decision to Claudio Blaydes. Since then, he's won 2 in a row, choking out Matt Sales last December and getting a split decision over Trey Ogden this April at UFC on ESPN, Luque versus Muhammad. Leavitt on a 2-fight win streak. Nonetheless, not favored to keep that one going. He is plus 210 as the underdog. Pimblett minus 250 as the favorite. Keith, you once said something about Jordan Leavitt, probably 12 or 18 months ago, that always comes to my mind when we preview one of his fights. I'm going to test your resolve. Yeah, are you going to pick Jordan Leavitt, or is it still never? Tell me how you see this fight.
Yeah, this fight, Paddy Pimblett and Jordan Leavitt, 2 guys that I have bashed, get matched against each other. There's the ultimate Keith Shillan fight right here. I'll say this about Paddy. I don't believe in the talent, but I love the personality. I love the fun. I feel the same way about Molly McCann. Now, Paddy is improving on his feet. He's a long rangy boxer, though he does drop his hands. But he has some surprising problem. He dropped Luigi Fioravanti, which not Fioravanti. I'll go way back.
Vendramini, but yeah,
Vendramini, yeah. Who's the Fioravanti was that middleweight, the old. That's it. He just thrown in those Terry Martin middleweights again.
And he was the one that was like the Marine or the former Marine, so they always had him fight at the fight nights on the military bases and stuff.
Yeah. He's pretty elusive. Talking about Pimblett, not Fioravanti. A lot of kicks. He loves the question mark kick. He'll throw a flying knee, and he does that just to kind of pressure and kind of back you up. He backs himself straight up, which is troublesome, and he's very hittable. Like even his last fight, he got tagged up a little bit. He's not a drive through your hips wrestler. He'll look more for upper body blocks. He had this beautiful judo throw in his last fight, which you're gonna like. And he's a guy who he'll want to create a scramble to kind of, because he's not a good wrestler, just kind of create a scramble and try to find a submission. He's very weak defensive wrestler, but that's because he doesn't mind getting taken down where he's on his back. He likes to work there. He's very flexible. He has some really slick back takes. He has a submission threat. He chains subs together, which I really like. If he misses the first one, he's going to the second one. Jordan Leavitt, he's big for the weight class, but he is one of the most one-dimensional fighters in the UFC. His stand-up is so bad. He doesn't want to strike with his opponent at all. I said this about when I saw him on the regional scene. He had one fight where he just butt scooted and chased his opponent until the opponent got trapped in the octagon as Jordan Leavitt. I swear, look it up, go find it. He didn't. There was another fight. There was like a 4-fight stretch where he didn't land a single strike. But to his credit, he did show some like small iota of striking in his last fight against Trey Ogden. I'll give him that. His chin is tough. Like his chin is high in there and he gets tagged up. He will shoot. He's more of a funk style wrestler, just kind of similar to Paddy Pimblett, just kind of create a scramble. He keeps his hips moving. He'll go for Imanari rolls to get the fight to the ground. He just wants to get down. He's also very flexible. I mean, look at him. He does a split after his wins. He has some really slick back takes. He has a submission right. He has 6 subs. He kind of go for his subs in any position. I've seen him hit a Darce choke and scramble. I've seen him hit slick Kimura as an amateur. He got a crucifix in one. But the one thing I don't like about him that he's in it's so similar. Pimblett has a very similar style. He'll chase a sub that isn't in. He'll compromise his position and get put in a bad position. And the other thing, and this stood out in the Claudio Puelles fight, his cardio is an issue. He will gas out if it's such a grapple heavy where he can't kind of just hold you down. Now, obviously Paddy already had this huge moment in England, but he's getting again. Like this guy was made for big moments, big cards, co-main events. I've been saying forever that he's more of hype than talent, but you said it. I refuse to pick Jordan Leavitt until he shows me some kind of stand-up. Now, Pimblett is the guy that will grapple with him, so I could see Leavitt just holding him down and winning a top-side grappling game. But with the crowd rocking, I think Pimblett's going to have moments where he's taken down, has to scramble, works back to his feet, taken down, has to scramble. We have some fun scrambles, but I see Leavitt kind of slowing down. I see the crowd just lifting Pimblett up with some cheers, and I think Pimblett catches a big shot. I'm going to say he does in the second round. Give me Paddy Pimblett in the second round in what's going to be the biggest pop of the night when he gets a second round TKO.
And Molly McCann comes running through with beer in her hand.
Yeah. That's what 6-0 for England.
Yep. I'm with you here. This is a well-crafted matchup to get Pimblett a win in front of the adoring fans without being a complete mockery in terms of where they stand in the division. Because, like you say, Pimblett's talent might not match up to his personality and his hype, but there's a lot of room underneath that ceiling. His personality and hype are both oversized. Like, he is a pretty good UFC quality lightweight at this point. And at 27 has room to keep developing. And even as he currently stands, Jordan Leavitt is a good guy for him to fight, because he got in trouble against Luigi Vendramini. Pimblett did, because he stood there in the pocket. They winged punches on each other. They both hurt each other. That's not going to be Leavitt. You pointed out that if Pimblett decides to test the waters on the ground with Leavitt, which he probably will at some point, Leavitt's very good down there and could get him in trouble. But if Pimblett can survive, Leavitt's likely to fade. So yeah, this one's got Pimblett written all over it. Give me Pimblett by third round TKO. Either just he has Leavitt in trouble on the ground and opts to pound him out rather than choke him out, or maybe Leavitt's tired on the feet and Pimblett just almost as tired, but not quite as tired, lands a couple of last sloppy haymakers, puts him down. This thing's over. The crowd goes wild. But give me Pimblett by third round TKO. We come now to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 208, a short notice, quickly thrown together middleweight matchup that won't have as much hometown appeal, but in terms of sheer competitive heft, is at least as interesting as the fight it took the place of. It is Jack Hermansson versus Chris Curtis. Hermansson, the 34-year-old Swede training out of Norway. I always get that backwards. I think I got it right that time. Is 22-7 overall. He is 9-5 in the UFC. He has been alternating losses for his last half dozen fights, but the most recent fight of his was a split decision loss to Sean Strickland in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 200 back in February. Prior to that, he had taken a unanimous decision over Edmund Shabazian, further pushing the one-time Golden Boy prospect into obscurity. He is going to try to get back into the win category against Curtis, who steps in on about 10, 12 days notice for Darren Till. Obviously, Darren Till would have been another recipient of one of the biggest pops on the night. But in terms of interest, Curtis, the UFC's most enjoyable surprise of the last year, 35-year-old Ohio native, is 29-8 overall. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC as the eternal regional journeyman who seemed to have come up against his ceiling in places like Bellator and PFL. But since joining the UFC last November, has a first-round knockout of Phil Hawes, a second-round knockout of Brendan Allen, and a comfortable unanimous decision win over Rodolfo Vieira. The most recent of those, the Vieira fight, was at UFC on ESPN Sarukian versus Gamrot just a couple weeks ago. He had no problems taking the fight on such short turnaround because, one, he didn't get a mark on him, and two, he doesn't have to cut much weight to make 185 as pretty much a career welterweight until just a year or two ago. Curtis, despite stepping in on such short notice, is the slight favorite here. He's minus 120. Hermansson available at even money out there, plus 100. Keith, I know that this fight changed long enough ago that you probably didn't get too far down the pike for a Till versus Hermansen matchup. But do you like this one better, or do you wish it was Till versus Hermansen? And who you got?
Well, I'll give you two answers. And Hermansen versus Curtis intrigues me more stylistically, but Hermansen versus Till in England, I'm more excited about that. Does that make sense? Like
Absolutely.
if you give me this fight in Vegas, yeah, all right, give me Curtis. I like the run he's on. I like the story he's on. Journeyman turned contender. It's a really fun story. But Darren Till in England, especially if he won, yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The reason why I think it's a fun stylistic, Jack Hermansen, he's not a great athlete. I mean, I think he would say that, but he's a very technically sound fighter. He never stops working. He has high volume. He doesn't waste energy. He just touches on the feet. He has a very get in and get out style, lands, gets out. Everything comes in from inside. All his strikes are tight. He does lack some power, which is troublesome. Like he's not going to one punch you, knock you out. He throws a lot of kicks, good calf kicks, good oblique kicks. He had some really good success going to the body of Jacare. You can beat him if you force him back on his back foot where he's not leading the dance. Also, he's going to have fights where he's just going to be slower, and that's going to hurt him. Like the Sean Strickland fight, he just got jabbed up by Sean Strickland. But he's got a solid chin. Other than Jared Cannonier, he really hasn't been hurt. He is a very underrated wrestler, just grappling in general. But he gets credit for his grappling, but he's a good wrestler. He's out grappled Talis Leites, Jacare, Edmund Shabazian, at times Marvin Vittori. That's really good run. He has 6 submission wins, and he's faced really good competition for a long time now. Chris Curtis, he's a guy that's looking better and better each fight. And that's because he is fighting with so much confidence right now. While he was on the regional scene, he was trying to fight to get into the UFC. Now he's not only in, he knows he belongs. And now he's actually, I think he believes that he can be a contender. So he is undersized. I mean, he's a former welterweight. His fights at middleweight, especially against a monster like Jack Hermansen. But he showed that power is not a problem. And he knocked out Phil Hawes. He knocked out Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen's a big dude. I mean, Phil Hawes is a freak athlete. Brendan Allen's a big dude. And so he showed he has the power to put anybody out. He's a southpaw. He's a very technically sound boxer. I mean, he's the definition of a compact, tight inside boxer. Tight hooks, tight uppercuts. I love that he goes down to the body. We saw that in his last fight against Vieira. He really worked the body. He's got some good calf kicks, but he does not show it. Does not throw him up. I've said this tons of times. Every single time I talk about Chris, when he throws calf kicks, a really good thing. He needs to throw them more. He needs to improve on some of his footwork, especially when he's being pressured to start sidestep and pivot, which really work good for a guy that throws short hooks, kind of pivot into a left hook or something. But one thing I love, and this one of the biggest difference from him on the regional scene, one I think going up, he's one of the guys who's going up a weight class that kind of the power has kind of gone with him, which is really nice. But also when he was on, the PFL, regional scenes like CES, fighting on the Contender Series, he was a little gun shy at times. That is not the case now in the UFC. He's letting those hands go. Very boxing style. He rolls with punches, kind of deflecting shots. He will occasionally look for a takedown, and he has some pretty good top control. He showed he has really good takedown defense. He showed that against Adolfo Vieira, and he has the cardio to go 15 minutes hard because he doesn't really waste energy. Very similar to Jack Hermansen. This is a tough fight. I wanted to pick Chris Curtis. I was thinking I was going to take him all week. However, I'm going to go with Hermansen for a couple of reasons. One, this is a big step up for Chris Curtis. Yeah, Curtis has beaten some really good guys. Adolfo Vieira is a really good win. Phil Hawes is a really good win. Brandon Allen's those are really good wins. But this is Jack Hermansen's been on the top of the UFC for a long time. There's a big size advantage, Curtis being undersized. And the biggest thing that stands out to me, one, Hermansen's a really smart fighter. I mean, even fights that he loses, where he was outclassed against Sean Strickland, he still got a split decision. Now, again, I don't think that should have been a split decision, but just because of the output he had, put him in a position where he could trick a judge into thinking he won. The thing I like about Hermansson is he uses all aspects of the game where Curtis really just boxes. Hermansson boxes, he kickboxes, he wrestles. So all those factors together, I'm going to take Hermansson by decision.
I have gone back and forth about this one. This, for me, easily the hardest fight on the card to call. I am leaning towards Curtis as a slight favorite, but I am not confident in it. I'd be a lot more confident in it if they were both coming off full camps for each other. But, you know, Curtis, even if he didn't take much damage in the Vieira fight, even if he doesn't have much of a cut to make 185 pounds, you know, he's going like 3 or 4 weeks between fights. You know, it does concern me, but I think Curtis is going to be able to stay upright. I think he's going to be able to throw enough volume to win rounds against Hermansson, even if he doesn't really ever hurt him. And I think he wins a decision over Hermansson here. And the noise in the arena won't be as loud, but the noise out in space, you know, like in the MMA space about Curtis as one of the more surprising newly arrived contenders in the UFC middleweight division will go through the roof. Yeah. So give me Curtis in a close, hard-fought decision.
Yeah, nothing against Jack Hermansson, but I would love to. It's just such a nice Cinderella story. Let me ask you this before we move on to the main event. If these guys fought 2 years, say Jack Hermansson was scheduled to face whoever he was scheduled to face 2 years ago, Jared Cannonier or something like this. If Cannonier got hurt or whoever, and Chris Curtis got put in that fight, how big of a favorite would Jack Hermansson been 2 years ago?
Oh my goodness. Almost 2 years ago to the week, Hermansson was tricking Kelvin Gastelum into thinking they were standing back up when in fact he was about to heel hook him in 60 seconds.
So replace Kelvin Gastelum at that moment with Chris Curtis.
Chris Curtis 2 years ago was getting ready to fight in XMMA, the resurrected like regional Florida promotion.
Yeah. Was he like retired? He retired in PFL.
Like, he retired twice in one night in PFL. Like, yeah, it would have been a joke, like no pun intended for Hermansson, but yeah, he would have been like a minus 600 favorite.
Chris Curtis, like, that actually should be like a funny game for him. Like, say he beats Jack Hermansson, and they ask him like, "Who do you want to fight next?" Like, "We don't want to fight. I'm retired." Like, he should just make everyone in the fight. He just retire after every single fight, and then like unretire like an hour later. That's my point. Just he would have been probably like a plus 700 underdog, and now he's the favorite.
Yep.
It's an incredible story.
It is, you know, and I'm not rooting for either fighter, but it would be fun to see it continue.
Yeah. What I like to do is I like picking against the guy that I don't have like this connection to, so that I'm happy either way.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, my pick was right. I'm happy. Oh, Chris Curtis is nice. Like I told you before, I root for the story. Whatever's the most exciting to talk about on the recap, that's what I kind of root for. So either way, I'll be happy.
There you go. I think that's a fair way to look at it. 13 fights in, we come to the top of UFC Fight Night 208, fight number 14, the only heavyweight matchup on the card. That's how you know this is going to be a good one, because there's no obligatory unranked heavyweight slobber knocker. No, this is a heavyweight, possible title eliminator. Who knows? It is Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall. Blaydes, the 31-year-old Oklahoman by way of Chicago, I think he is now. 16-3 with 1 no contest overall. 11-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight win streak since getting knocked out by Derek Lewis last year. He has taken a unanimous decision over Jairzinho Rosenstrike last September, and then most recently in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 33 this March, knocked out Chris Daukaus just seconds into the second round of their headliner fight. He will look to make it 3 straight against Aspinall. The 29-year-old Mancunian is 12-2 overall. He is a perfect 5-0 in the UFC. Those victims, Jake Collier, Alan Baudot, Andrei Arlovsky, Sergey Spivak, and most recently in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 204 this past March, Alexander Volkov, whom he tapped out in the first round. All 5 of his UFC victories have, in fact, been finishes inside of the first 2 rounds, and Arlovsky was the only one even to make it to the second round. It's been a story of complete dominance for the young man from Manchester. If he can keep that going against probably one of the 3 best fighters in the division, 4 best fighters in the division, and Blaydes, obviously he is ready for a title shot now. He is actually the slight favorite to pass the test here. He's out there around minus 130, minus 135 on most books. Blaydes available at Aspinall minus 135 or so. Blaydes around plus 110, plus 115 on most of them. Keith, I guess I'm slightly surprised at the line here, but you and I, and it's not like we're geniuses or like have seeing into the future to see Tom Aspinall as a future champion. All of it's obviously there. He's, born and bred grappler. I mean, his dad is the BJJ coach at Team Kaobon. He's been doing it since he was a kid. But then at the same time, a guy who boxed before he did BJJ competitively and took a year off in the middle of his young career to go box professionally and actually picked up a professional win. He has all the physical tools. He is a huge guy. He is one of the biggest heavyweights in the UFC just in terms of like lean bulk. Like the UFC's got a number of 6'5", 255-pound guys, but in terms of like body composition and the frame, the skeleton that it's sitting on, he's as big as any of them, and he is a plus athlete. He's fast, he's coordinated, just a smooth athlete both on the feet and on the ground. On the ground, he is almost frighteningly fast and powerful. I mean, it's probably because he looks a little bit like Frank Mir, but it reminds me of early Frank Mir, where it was like 2002, 2003, and he was this just huge guy that moved like a middleweight on the ground and was dealing with people that just were not prepared to deal with that kind of grappler. That's what Tom Aspinall looks like in 2020, 2021, 2022. He's an absolutely frightening individual. I think he's one of the better offensive wrestlers in the heavyweight division, and not even like British offensive wrestler. Like he's just a good, he's just a good wrestler.
So I've been having all the British fans hate me if we keep making little jabs at their British wrestling, and Ben's the crowd favorite with the British people, with the buttering up to the Brits.
I'm just a crowd pleaser here.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying he's Blaydes. He doesn't have nobody in heavyweight history has like the traditional just double leg and single leg shot from outside the Blaydes does. Maybe not.
Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, like Brock Lesnar and his war chest full of horse steroids, maybe. But
maybe Randy.
But even Randy, like he would shoot, but most of his takedowns
clinch.
Yeah, clinch stuff.
Especially at heavyweight when he was undersized.
Yeah, like before Cain Velasquez's knees died, he would shoot from the outside.
Yeah,
but Blaydes he's in the team photo.
He's in the club.
But Aspinall, very good at getting fighters to the ground where, when, and how he wants them. And he has a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt you. Of course, we're not talking about like Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr going against guys who never stepped in a wrestling room ever. Well, like that's different. That's different.
And Mark Coleman, yeah, and wearing wrestling shoes.
Yeah. Fighting taxi drivers. Yeah. We're talking about somewhat modern.
Yeah, somewhat modern. But Aspinall, very good at getting fighters to the ground, not just getting him to the ground, but where, when, and how he wants. He has a little bit of the thing that Velasquez or Blaydes does, where he takes you down with some force, knocks a little bit of the wind out of you, and he's already advancing to side control or wherever he wants to be while the other guy is getting his wits about him. I'm just interested to see if he's going to try that on Blaydes, because we know all about Blaydes' offensive wrestling, but how many times have we seen Blaydes have to fight off a takedown from somebody? When have we ever seen him on his back? What does that look like? What does it look like if he ends up underneath a guy who is pretty much his same size and a crushingly heavy top position grappler who is kind of an equal opportunity distributor? Because the scary thing about Aspinall on the ground is he's happy to take your back and choke you up, but he will also punch you in the face incredibly hard until you do. He's a ultra choose your poison guy when he gets you on the ground. Blaydes his Achilles heel thus far I mean, who's he lost to? Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
Basically, guys with
Two
very
biggest
good
hitters
takedown
ever.
defense. Yeah, maybe the two biggest hitters ever. Basically, the people who've beaten Curtis Blaydes are people who not only could stop or slow his takedowns, but could hit him hard enough with a single blow to change the fight. Because Alexander Volkov caught Blaydes with a flush knee on one of his takedown attempts, and Blaydes just kind of like shook it off and then went back to, grinding him down. So did Jairzinho Rosenstrike. Not everybody can do this. So we know all about Blaydes' offensive wrestling. I'm interested to see if he gets put on the defensive. Or I wonder if Aspinall tries to test things on the feet. Maybe Aspinall thinks he has the kind of power that he can just catch Blaydes behind the ear with something like Ngannou did, or can submarine him with a perfectly timed uppercut like Lewis did and turn the fight on a dime. We're going to learn something. We're probably going to learn something about both guys in this fight. We're definitely going to learn something about Aspinall, since we already know that Curtis Blaydes is a top contender. A lot of it, to me, depends on how Aspinall approaches the fight, because I think we know how Blaydes is going to. Blaydes is going to strike exactly long enough to see his first opportunity to take a shot, and then he's going to take it. If he takes that and Aspinall shucks him off, then it just ends up being a striking contest. We're going to learn something about both guys. If Aspinall pancakes him and spins around to the back, we got a whole other fight going on. And that's, I mean, I'm not rooting for either guy, but that's what I'm rooting for to see. I want to see Blaydes' grappling. I want to see Blaydes in scrambles. Because all we've seen so far is him either wrestle the other guy into the dust or get knocked out. Give me Aspinall, but I think this goes, I don't know if it goes all 5 rounds, but I think this goes like well into the main event rounds. It goes at least halfway through the 4th round, and it ends up being a gas tank thing. Give me Curtis Blaydes to survive and to win and kind of put a little bit of brakes on the Tom Aspinall Express. Just probably, like a TKO of a tired Aspinall on the ground. And what we learn is Curtis Blaydes is still really, really good. Yeah. Tom Aspinall is still really, really good. Will probably be a champ one day, but him finishing all of his UFC opponents in like 3 minutes, has left some things to take back to the drawing board.
So Aspinall has ran through his last 2 opponents, submitting him really quick. Imagine if he submits Curtis Blaydes.
Oh, my goodness.
Imagine he submits him quick, like in the first round, like he just did Volkov.
Just takes him down, or again, pancakes the takedown, ends up on top and just Kimura's him, or
Imagine the hype. If Curtis Blaydes shoots a takedown and Aspinall jumps guillotine, chokes him out cold, or like you said, pancakes and spins behind, whatever.
Yeah.
Sprawl, spins behind, chokes him out, gets a submission in a minute and a half. Is he the favorite against Francis Ngannou? Betting favorite?
He's at least closer to it than anybody else in the division.
Yeah. Yeah. It just now that's what I'm rooting for to happen, just because the storyline. We talked about how good this card is. I mean, it to me, this card has a pay-per-view feel without a title shot, like without a title. If you would Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena card, if you completely scrapped the entire card and threw this undercard in with that main event, would it sell any less pay-per-views?
No.
I don't think so either. Like, that's how good this card is. I mean, you took Blaydes, but I mean, Blaydes could obviously ruin a lot of UFC plans with Aspinall. I mean, it is a real risk making this matchup, because if Aspinall passes it in England and he passes the test like Curtis Blaydes, even if he wins a split decision, the hype on him is going to be through the roof, beating a guy like Curtis Blaydes.
Yes.
But that's a big ass. Because if not, you're really setting up Curtis Blaydes for another title shot, a guy that you really don't want to be fighting for a title, or at least, high in the conversation. Curtis Blaydes is this massive heavyweight who he has some big wins. He's And the scary thing about him is we've talked about it before about how young he is. He's probably just starting to come into his prime years now. His stand-up has come such a long way. I mean, we saw him just starch Chris Dawkins with ease in his last fight. Obviously, he has big power. I mean, look at him. And a lot of it, he lands shots on the ends of his punches. And that we talked about before because he has that really weird frame. He has these long, weird arms. His straight right is his best punch. One thing I'm worried about him being that he's starting to knock guys out is he's not one of these wrestlers who starts falling in love with his hands and he forgets where he has an advantage. Back to his stand-up, he uses feints well. He shoulder rolls, which I've been saying, like, I like deflecting shots with the shoulders, except a heavyweight. You're playing with fire at heavyweight to kind of because you got to, deflecting shot off the forehead at middleweight, at bantamweight. It's a little different than getting one at heavyweight. Yeah. He throws some hard, like, I mean, look how built he is. Well, you mentioned when we talk about the all-time greatest wrestlers at heavyweight, we mentioned the names Randy Couture, Brock Lesnar, Cain Velasquez, Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, Mark Kerr. Yeah. Where does Curtis Blaydes stand all time? Who knows? But right now, he's the best wrestler in the division. And there's no debate. Like, yeah, is Tom Aspinall a really good wrestler? Yeah, he looks like he is. But in a straight wrestling match, I'm taking Curtis Blaydes. He's a heavyweight that shoots penetration shots, which is so rare. He blasts right through his opponent's defense. I mean, look at what he did to Volkov. Just took him out over and over again. Shamil Abdurrahimov was another fight where he just that's the guy with the wrestling background, just driving right through. And the thing about Curtis Blaydes, which I like in this fight, not in the excitement factor, but I mean, if I'm coaching Curtis Blaydes, if I'm on his team, I'm betting on Curtis Blaydes, whatever it is, he doesn't care about being excited. Usually, now I'm hoping that I'm hoping if I'm backing Blaydes, is he doesn't fall in love with his hands and he wants to sling it out and try to chase a knockout. But usually he doesn't care. He'll hold you down. Doesn't care if Aspinall's pinned to the canvas. He's getting booed in their hometown. The place is throwing popcorn on him and beer on him as he's walking out. He won't care. And when he's on top, he just slowly works to a better position. Once his opponent is tired, he unloads some of the scariest ground and pound, especially when he gets his opponent pinned against the cage. The one big concern I have, well, two big concerns. The last time we seen him fight deep in a fight was the Volkov fight. We had to go 5 rounds. He looked fantastic for about 3.5, 4 rounds. And then I don't know if you remember, he kind of gassed out. Mm-hmm. And the fight was never in jeopardy, and he was so far ahead. But it is a little bit concerned if you can kind of push him, you're still going to have a shot late. And then ultimately the biggest thing is the chin. The Francis Ngannou, the Derek Lewis, the guys who, scary knockouts. Again, the two biggest hitters, I think it's safe to say the two biggest hitters in the history of the sport. I mean, I don't know who else would even be in the conversation.
You can talk about someone like, Mark Hunt, but.
Oh, yeah, that's fair enough. Well, yeah, Mark Hunt, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, and I guess Shane Carwin.
But
Rumble
Blaydes flattened Mark Hunt, and he's 0-3 against Ngannou and Lewis.
Yeah. So, but the whole point is, the two, in my opinion, probably the two biggest hitters.
Sure. Tom
Aspinall, though, this guy, obviously the new kid on the block, he's a big guy. He's 6'5". He's long and lengthy. There's not many guys that can match the size of Curtis Blaydes. Tom Aspinall is that guy. And the crazy thing, as big as we talk about Curtis Blaydes, he's quick. Mm-hmm. He is not going to be the quicker guy in this fight. He's not going to be the more athletic guy. I mean, we talk about the best wrestler being Curtis Blaydes. Who's quicker than Tom Aspinall right now? I mean, maybe Gone? Maybe. I don't know. And what I was thinking about the rise of Aspinall being this good athlete, this guy who looks like a middleweight moving around, it's what stood out about Stipe Miocic as his rise in the division. He was that athletic guy that moved, but you have that and then bigger, Mm-hmm. He's quick, he's light on the feet, he moves well, He can fight out of both stances. He's well-rounded. I mean, for a long time, you heard about him being the jiu-jitsu guy, and then he's knocking guys on the feet. Then you finally start thinking he's a boxer, and now he's quickly taking guys down to submittals. He's a really quick twitch boxer. He's got accurate strikes. He's got power in both of his hands. Now he's mixing in takedowns with his striking. He's got some slick grappling. I mean, he beat the brakes off of Sergey Spivak with ground and pound. And then look what he just did to Andrei Arlovsky and Alexander Volkov. He submitted those guys with ease.
Yeah.
So as far as the prediction goes, I have flip-flopped back and forth both times. I mean, both guys are really good. And that's why this is such a fantastic main event and such a fantastic card, because this is probably the toughest fight on the card to pick. I was leaning Blaydes due to what I think will be a wrestling advantage. Yes, I understand what you're saying with Aspinall, that he might be a much tougher test in the grappling, in the wrestling, strictly the wrestling, not the jiu-jitsu, but strictly the wrestling. But I want to see Aspinall show that he can't get pinned to the canvas against a guy like Curtis Blaydes. Plus, Blaydes, I've seen a lot of people talking about Aspinall's power. Blaydes is a huge dude. He can land one big shot. Like, would be shocked if Blaydes just starches him. Like, that wouldn't shock me. However, it wouldn't shock me if Aspinall starches Blaydes, especially because we've seen it. We've seen Blaydes get hurt in the past. We've seen Blaydes have to be perfect in fights, and maybe that's the case in this fight. I have gone England. Hold on, let me get this out. I've gone England. I got them 6-0 in the night. I don't think they're going perfect, though. I'm going Curtis Blaydes. I'm going to go with Blaydes due to his wrestling. As Aspinall has faced higher competition recently, he's really relied on his grappling as he stepped up in competition. I can't see him winning a grappling matchup against Curtis Blaydes. Give me Blaydes to land some takedowns, to play it safe, some topside wrestling. I think we might have a boring Curtis Blaydes decision with he just ruins the night for the Brits, keeps them from going perfect. Give me Blaydes by decision.
There we go. Some agreement on the slight upset in the headliner of UFC London. Last question for you. Could you see any result from this that would really sour you on Aspinall as a contender, or would it just be a case of too much too soon?
If he gets starched, maybe. If he gets starched early, not saying like, I won't say like, oh, he's done, but that would be like a little bit too soon. If he gets taken, like if he goes down the way that sound like both me and you pick, where he's getting out wrestled, that I'm not gonna feel bad. Like hold on, if he doesn't make the wrestling competitive at all, if Blaydes is just Volkoffing him right through it, then I'm a little worried. But if there's times he's struggling, but Blaydes gets a takedown here, gets a takedown there, like I won't feel that bad. Does that make sense?
No, it completely makes sense. And the reason I asked is because that's the way I feel. I'm picking Blaydes in this fight, but I think we'll look back on it as a moment where we're like, you know what? This was Aspinall's first time past the second round in the UFC. He came back stronger for it, and 5-round fights were never a problem again.
And he's 29. Like, we could legit get 15 more years of this guy in the division.
We could.
And be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I think Blaydes wins this weekend, even though I'm not surprised by the opposite outcome. But I think it's more likely that Aspinall is a UFC champ than Blaydes, just because of kind of what's above Blaydes in the pecking order.
Obviously, Francis Ngannou has beat him twice now.
Yeah.
But the improved wrestling of Francis Ngannou makes it feel less confident.
Yeah.
Where there was a time where I was saying, I know Francis Ngannou has starched Curtis Blaydes twice, but I still think Curtis Blaydes could be a really tough stylistic matchup for Francis Ngannou. The more and more I see, NCAA wrestling and Ngannou, the least confident I feel of Curtis Blaydes. Yeah. But it wouldn't surprise me if Curtis Blaydes won the title. It really wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't surprise me if either of them did, but like I would almost like slightly favor Aspinall to be the one more likely to have worn the belt at some point, say 3 years from now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that is it. the UFC London UFC Fight Night 208 preview on the Sherdog Radio Network. I've been Ben Duffy. He's been Keith Schillen. Thank you for watching. Doubly thank you if this happens to be your first time watching us. Please do like, subscribe, leave us comments.
Leave comments, they're important, please.
Yeah, Keith and I will both answer you. You know, as long as you're reasonably decent. And by all means, especially join us on the recap. 10 to 15 minutes after the main event, we are live on the Sherdog YouTube page talking about all 14 of these fights. Please, all 14 of them make it to the cage. Talking about what was good, what was bad, what was controversial. There's always something. What's next for the winners as well as the losers? Who needs to get cut? Did the right people get the bonuses? All that good stuff. And we like to hear from you. The live chat is wide open during that recap on the YouTube page. So we are taking your questions, your comments, your hot takes. We'd love to see you there. Between now and then, thank you again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week and definitely enjoy the fights.